lot of really cool things regarding social media, marketing, so on and so forth. So definitely looking forward to share that information with you guys as more connected with that and continue to grow whatever we're trying to do with our organization businesses. And so this last couple of weeks has been really a lot of good conversations about networking, which we all know is important. Also, again, what we do with social media, how we use social media, how we learn more and more about it. As we all know, TikTok is on the rise, and it behooves us to know how to best use these different tools that are at our disposal. At the end of the day, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or YouTube or um, TikTok, these are things that can really benefit our reach that we have, whether it's locally or nationally or even internationally. It's also something that is practically free, right? We do use our phones, we can use our phones, we can purchase cameras and things like that, but it is a way to get our message, our organization, our personality, so on and so forth out there for the world to see. And the reality is that the world is actually there to listen, right? The way that social media is set up, people are there all the time, always interested, always engaged. And so it's definitely a tool that we want to use to the best of our ability. And so looking forward to share more about that in the coming weeks. But I did want to get some updates about how you all are doing, how things are going. I know Shanita just had an event this weekend that I want to hear more about. So, Shanita, if you can unmute yourself and share a little bit about how this weekend went for you, any takeaways, but as of course, how it went, your experience with it, and anything else you'd like to share about it. Let's see if she's there. I need some time. She should not be able to be focused on it. While Shanita gets ready, Bobby, do you have any updates about how things are going with hitting your goals, or to whether it's fundraising or I guess putting things together with you and your
Yeah, I have a few things. Excuse me. I'm we as you know, I announced last meeting we were able to secure the grant. So we
team.
got that. I just started working with our program officer, getting ready to finalize the contract on that. Um, we also have got a lot of interest from a lot of different interns, and so this weekend we're having a small mixer with the interns. We're doing like a hybrid of a mixer slash interview, like a speed interview, to kind of go through because we got a lot bigger reach of people who wanted to intern with us. So we're going to be doing that this weekend to figure out which ones we're going to select and then get ready to start onboarding and train them. And it really ties into one of the areas that you were just mentioning is we definitely need assistance with the social media component. So I'm hoping some of them will have, or at least one or two of them will have some skills in there.
Indeed, indeed. Like with the ranges,
It's kind of going in and out, but I'm actually getting ready to get out of the car right now and walk in.
Okay.
What was the question that you'd asked,
Cool.
Jimmy?
Yeah, we'll see you in Say it again.
Oh, I was just asking, what was the question that you had asked? I wasn't able to hear it.
Oh yeah, you mentioned about the social media. I was wondering what was like the age range of the folks who were interested in doing the internships.
Yeah, so they are students at University of San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
And the age range for at least the grant that we just got, it's a grant for at-risk youth for the TEA population.
Mm-hmm. That's good. That's good. Cool. So yeah, honestly, the 20 somethings have much more of a handle on these things. Of course, it varies depending on their interest in, having a lot of fun with these different apps. But a lot of folks do have a lot of fun with them. And so those skills can definitely be utilized for your organization. Glad you're here. Cool, cool, cool. So that's good stuff. That's good stuff. And then had they said any, or have you learned more about whether or not the money would need to be floated, or how the money would be coming in for the grant?
Yeah, that of course is one of the first questions with the program officer,
Right.
Because that's going to determine whether or not, or when, not whether or not, but when I can leave my job.
Right,
So I
right.
can devote more time to this. And the first payment, it's distributed in two payments. The first
Okay.
payment is 75%,
Okay.
and it will be done 2 to 3 weeks after we finalize the contract, which they said all the contracts should be done by the end of February.
Okay.
So mid-March,
Yeah,
we should get first payment, and then they distribute the remaining 25% after you submit all of the paperwork and everything. At
Okay.
the end of the program.
Right, right. And so was it a year thing, or is it
It's 18 month.
18 months? Okay.
Yeah, so it's spread over an 18-month period.
Right.
But yeah, they started a little bit late. They wanted to start in January, but things get pushed back so that we're actually not supposed to be starting until March.
Right, right. Okay. Cool, cool. Well, no, yeah, that was very important.
Yeah. Yeah. What's that?
Information.
Show me the money.
Exactly.
When is it coming?
Exactly. Please break this down.
Yeah.
Cool. That's good stuff. That's good stuff. And so the mixer, will it be? I mean, I feel like you were saying, will it be in person?
Yeah. Well, it's a hybrid as far as
So
we want to bring together people so that they can all meet each other, and then we can do the onboarding. Once we identify who we're selecting, do the onboarding as a group and bring people all together on board and do the training. But ideally, we'd love to do the mixer in person.
Right, right.
But I'm wanting to start it. I'm doing. We're going to do it online, just to have a little more control of it, as far as like when we're doing like our speed interviews with each person. Right. We can do breakout rooms, and then that'll also position us so when we start spreading and we're doing interviews, or we're doing taking interns from other locations, and as we're spreading across the nation, we'll be able to already have the system in place.
Right, right. Right, right. That's good stuff.
But in person's always, I feel it's always better at least to get to know people when you're first starting.
Yeah.
But we won't be able to do that later. So I'm like, let's just go ahead and start it the way that we're going to ultimately do it.
Right, right. Maybe to try to work on having the best questions and stuff to get to who the people are.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. That's a good good progress moving forward with everything. So that's good news. Cool, cool.
Continually moving.
Right, right. Shanita, let us know if you are available, if you can share anything about progress with your organization. Also, anything about the event you would like to share. She said that she would be
In and out.
Yeah. So. Okay. And so if you're not able to talk, I'll get to share a little bit more about the speaker today. And then he should actually be arriving. It said that his ETA is at 9:50, so he should be here really soon. But I met him actually the first time I saw him was at an event, and it was more like a panel discussion. If I'm not mistaken, he didn't put it on, but he was one of the guys that was there. And it was a podcast, and they were interviewing different men who have organizations or businesses and so forth. And so he was talking about how what his organization does, why they do what they do, and so forth. And it was one of the organizations that I recognized in Oakland that was primarily dedicated to, again, connecting with Black men, supporting them, giving certain services, and really just having some type of community that is being created around it, which again, honestly, I hadn't really heard of. But my assumption was that it was a nonprofit organization. When I started to actually reach out myself just to find out more about how to get involved, he began to share that it's actually through paid memberships. That when people pay monthly, that they'll have access to monthly potlucks, monthly, or rather weekly yoga classes, weekly, I want to say book club meetings, and weekly, maybe not weekly, I would say, monthly events in which people will show up and get to hear and share stories, but particularly the people who will be sharing stories were other Black men that were willing to share and so forth. So I was just like really surprised and interested in their mission, what their goals were, and so forth. And when the opportunity arose, I was like, okay, let me see if I can connect with him, and he could share more about how he got his business started, what it was that put him on that trajectory, and as well, what are some of the mechanisms that he uses in order to make it work, especially because it's so service driven. It's definitely not as simple as, hey, we're out here to try to make some money. It really is very focused on how do we support each other, encourage each other, be there for each other, create community, and allow each other to be built up by this community. And so he began to share, once I talked with him, he mentioned that he also has a fiscal sponsor. And that was the second time somebody mentioned that they have an LLC. And so we began to share more about that. And he said that he actually, most of the money doesn't come simply from having the memberships, but actually comes from the relationship that they have with other businesses, and bringing and having workshops at their facilities, having seminars, and things like that. And so I was really surprised by that, because I had spoken with someone else recently, and I feel like this definitely relates to Taisha's story when she does get a chance to check it out, that she's not just connecting with individuals, at her events, but she's also connecting with other businesses that would want her to bring her services to them. And so I could also imagine that could be very similar to what Tanika is doing with Necessary Essentials of Life. And so definitely looking forward to him sharing. But he definitely, when I spoke with him yesterday, he's like, I'm an open book, just kind of like what Candace did. We have questions, he has answers, has ideas, but also the resources too, right? So she pointed us to different organizations and agencies and things like that he'll be able to share, what has helped him to either sustain the growth, make it happen, overcome the hurdles that he's had in this process. And I believe that it's been around for about 4 years or so. And so it has been a little bit of time for him to, be able to survive the economy, as well as the things that naturally come, ups and downs of business flow and things like that. So, yeah, definitely looking forward to it. I want to actually point you, if you can, it's pulling up right now. On Instagram, his page is called Create the Space. And it's CRE and then number 8.
So just one other. I noticed, I don't know if you want to maybe put the microphone a little bit closer, because I know when I was coming, it was a little hard to hear and there was an echo. So I don't know if, oh, you're right. I don't know if the recording is able to hear.
Hey. Good to see you,
Good morning.
man. Good morning.
So awesome.
How you doing? Pleasure. And
Hi.
Nadia, pleasure. Themselves. How's everybody? Apology.
Good.
Good.
It's all
Trying to
good,
get
man.
down here. It was an adventure.
Right, right.
They say 8:30.
Right, exactly, yeah. No, and I heard that today was particularly crazy getting here.
Yeah.
We're
I
talking
don't know why there's so many delays on the BART.
uh-huh.
I just can't trust public transportation, which is my only means of transportation now.
Right.
Might as well just stay home.
Sometimes. But yeah, I was actually just again letting them know a little bit about how we connected, one, and then two, about your business insofar as I've experienced it, and I was actually just about to show them your page.
Well, if you want, you can bring up. I'll send you. Are you on the phone?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can send you a link to an overview of our organization. And we can just do a brief. We can do an improv conversation.
Cool.
So I'm saying that now.
Well, do you don't need any water? We have a couple of them.
Sweet. As long as there's no sugar. So I've been doing this 16-8
Uh-huh.
and so I'm not allowed to have anything sugar or anything that will spike my insulin before 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right. That's up.
All right. Let's share this.
Is that with Instagram or text or?
So this is your office?
No, this is just one of the offices that we use. One thing that we have in terms of at YCD is there's a bunch of little spaces.
Mhm.
And so it's not like we have like one big building that we all get to meet in, but it's just like, oh, we got a little few rooms over there, we got a few rooms over there, we got a few rooms over there. And so it's always a matter of like trying to see like who's using what, and when can we use this, and when can we use that. So this is actually just a space where we come in and have these trainings.
Okay.
Because it's the most available, it's just a space for folks to come through. But honestly, we just think kind of this meeting when and wherever we can, which is why we talked to you about meeting at Oakstock. I mean, you know, she's over in Oakland, I'm over in Richmond. And so it's like going to be good for us just to be able to meet somewhere where it's connected to where we're closest to, rather than come here and be like, all right, now where we going to meet, you know, after we got suppliers.
Right.
Drive all the way to Toll and stuff like that. Yeah. But let me see. So Anaya, I'm wondering if we can even project, share a certain link that you just shared. Is that possible?
Project. It was at the Instagram.
No. So this is actually is like a slide. Yeah, the slide presentation has some kind of an overview of the organization and business.
Are you running this off of your phone?
No, this is off
Mm,
with
camera.
the laptop there.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, as long as she has the link, she can screen share.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I could send it.
Yes, and then send the link to them on here. Yes, I'm not sure how
Yeah,
to
like a chat,
project
right?
it.
Drop the link into the chat.
Right. Maybe if I send it to your email.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Or do you do you know if Crystal Brooker still works here?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
still works here. She's over the Black to the Future program.
Yeah, yeah. How's that going?
I don't know, honestly. They yeah, I'm not super honestly when it comes to programs, a whole bunch of them. So I'm not, not aware of what everyone's doing all the time. But from my understanding, they're good. Yeah. Let's see. All right, so I'm sending that email right now.
Mhm.
But yeah, to my best of my understanding, things are.
And as I understand it, you started your own yoga practice. Right?
No, no, nah. No, I honestly I haven't really done yoga since I got to connect with you guys over there. But no, I've just been doing things around the one around the hat stuff, and then two, trying to continue with financial literacy stuff that I've been doing just for a number of actually a number of years, and so looking forward to some more opportunities around that. Sharing, educating, whether it's credit, budgeting.
What aspects of financial literacy and what audience? Because I just talked to somebody about eventually doing some financial literacy work.
Right. So, man, well, I would say the first thing that I was touching on and do touch on is just managing a budget. One, creating one, acknowledging what are the things that we're spending on and what we need to be spending money on, and what we need to be saving for. Moving from there, creating an annual budget, and being able to create a saving system that allows us to be prepared for not only emergencies but also the annual things like registration, Christmas, even birthdays and holidays, such that there's money that's continually being saved up, such that when they kind of like, oh shoot, here goes the mortgage money, take care of these Christmas gifts, and then moving on into credit. So building credit, repairing credit, and also I would say using credit cards, effectively, using credit cards wisely, managing our credit, and then even getting somewhat into like larger purchases around home ownership and of course car ownership, things like that. And so anything in that vicinity, I've done some stuff around investing, and able to touch on that. But I know it gets way deeper than I'm are able to go at this juncture. But
Able to? What do you mean by that?
Well, the reality is that there's so many ways to invest, right? So we can invest with, for instance, 401k. We can invest with, Robinhood or Thinkorswim, and that's just like kind of long-term stuff, which is put your money there, and you can monitor it. But at the end of the day, it's about putting money there continually. But I also acknowledge that there is the side of it that is more like trading options, day trading, right? And so when you get into that, it's just like it just gets way deeper. So I'm actually connected with folks who do know that stuff. But I know that I'm still trying to figure out some of that.
Okay. Do you have any like material or content that you might be able to share with me? Because I think there are some opportunities in the East Bay, or in downtown Oakland with some organizations that are looking.
Yeah, I do. I know I could share a few things. I know I do have a slide deck that I could share. And see what's on.
Well, I don't want you to give them away your content.
Right. And so what do you think?
More so like
bio,
bio, one pager overview, curriculum, any of these things.
Okay. Yeah, I could definitely get that to you. I'll see within a couple of days.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's no rush. Whenever.
Okay. Yeah, I hear that. But yeah, no, so that's been a whole thing, and just been grateful for this opportunity to connect with other folks who are again building businesses and organizations. It's primarily for not only San Francisco residents, but folks who are having nonprofits.
Mhm.
But what I'm acknowledging is that some people, one there's a bunch of cross information that needs to be shared, right? It's like, I have a nonprofit, so I only connect with nonprofit leaders, and it's business leaders are going to be able to tell you also some things that's helping them, and vice versa, right? We just talked last week about board of directors, building those things up, and I'm acknowledging businesses also have board of directors and advisory boards, and so it's all like, oh, so I think that there's a whole lot of common ground that can be shared between the two sides. But with that being said, some of the folks in here also have both, right? Someone has a nonprofit and a business, or someone has a nonprofit and they want to find a way to allow it to have a business aspect so that it can, sell its services or products, to bring in capital.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And so okay, cool. You got that there. So I would say if you want to kind of like lead her and she could
Yeah,
kind of
for sure. I got you. So who all do we have with us?
I believe Shanita is on the chat. If you guys want to say hi.
Yeah, I don't know if she can pick up. So Shanita, if you're there, if you can chime in. Even you could share something in the chat if you're available. But yeah, if you could just introduce yourself if possible. Yeah, she actually, she's been one that actually has been showing up pretty regularly, but she's beginning to build an organization around breast cancer awareness. Really coming from and utilizing her own story with regard to experiencing that herself.
Is she in the Bay?
Yeah. So everybody here is in San Francisco.
Okay.
Yeah.
I might need to talk to her.
Okay.
I might need to talk to you. Because I actually just sat in a meeting with leukemia and lymphoma. But I can't remember the name. But they were basically asking me if we could do some partner work in the advocacy space around lymphoma and leukemia. And they had pitched doing a joint program with a sister organization, or an organization led by predominantly women. And so they were asking me if I knew anything. She had something going on. I think that's her name.
Word. That's what's up, indeed. And so yeah, she's getting started. She just had an event this last weekend. I'm still waiting for her to be able to share some more about it. But yeah, big emphasis on being able to get resources out to the folks who need certain bras or need they need a wig or something like that in order to get through the process with chemo and such. But definitely really coming at it from a standpoint of providing emotional support through that process, acknowledging that it's a lonely process. It's very difficult in terms of knowing all of the uncertainty around what's happening with your body. And so she said that she wants to be someone and allow her organization to be there to answer calls, have meetings and stuff like that. People can come and share and be around community as they enjoy that. And then we have Bobby here. If you could share a little bit about your organization, what you're creating.
Yeah, sure. Pleasure again. And so we launched it's a national online reentry support network and resource hub for people that are coming out of prisons and jails. And so really what we wanted to be able to do is be able to leverage three things, right? Leverage lived experience, leverage technology, and leverage collaboration with industry leaders to be able to create that community, create a platform. We call it our Changing the Game platform, where people can join our membership, come on, be able to have monthly meetings, be able to talk about the challenges and the barriers and things that are going on as they're coming out and they're transitioned from in custody back into the community. And then also provide some direct services. And so like housing navigation assistance, providing like a reentry plan to really be able to help them identify and connect with the different reentry service providers, depending on what their major barriers are. Right? So if their barriers are, or they're, we're prioritized. So if their barriers are housing, employment, those are two common ones, and basic necessities. And we'll be like, okay, well, let's prioritize. What do you need first, right? And be able to create a plan to be able to connect them with those services and connections, that support network, to be able to find, identify, and get those services that they need to start rebuilding their lives.
Nice, I love it. And how you're in the Bay, San Francisco as well? Yeah. How long have you been doing this?
So we officially launched last year, January of last year. We started with a beta here in 5 counties. Well, 4 counties here in the Bay and Sacramento. We had to completely overhaul our system and change the way that we were, because one of our tools that we have is an online resource locator. So people, it's kind of like a Yelp. You can go to our website, say there's like 7 categories, and say I'm looking for housing services.
Information.
Yeah,
this is super interesting.
And then you click on which resource you're looking for, resource provider you're looking for, and then you can just use your current. It has GPS to use your current location, or you state the city. And then it'll pull up a listing of all those organizations.
That's amazing.
So that's the scalability and allow us to start. So we're focusing, we were hyper-focused starting here just to really start to build it out. We're in the process, our next phase right now, which is to start to scale across California and scale nationally.
Love that. Okay, so I have questions. How is your partnership development going?
And there's several different types of partners. In what area?
Well, I guess that's a great question. In terms of when it comes to reentry, are you working with any peer-led organizations?
Yeah. So, and I probably could have given some more specificity also. So, some of our partners would be like the CBOs and the businesses and government agencies that provide services, right? That's one level. The other level is with different law enforcement agencies to be able to get into like the different systems, right? And then the third, which you were just mentioning, is like strategic partnerships and relationships with other peer-led organizations. That is something we've started, and this is our next phase right now. It's really starting to build those out to be able, because the thing is, we don't want to recreate the web. Right? What we want to do is collaborate. I mean, when you go to our website, you'll see that's the right at the top, right? Is about collaboration, right? And so what we want to do is really be able to like help organizations to not work in silos, to be able to leverage the skills and the resources that we all have, and instead of being that divisiveness and working in silos and trying to like fight for limited funds, like how can we like specialize? How can we work in our areas of expertise to be able to have the greatest impact on the community? And so, myself and all of our staff, we're all formerly incarcerated, and that's not the only people we work with. We also have the intern. I was just mentioning earlier. We've had some interns and some volunteers already, and we're getting another wave of interns this weekend. But really to be able to form those relationships and identify who those organizations are who want to connect and collaborate. And so one thing that I like right now that's pressing that I'm looking for as far as those types of partnerships is youth programs. Okay. At-risk youth programs. We just received a smaller grant to start one here. And so really what my thing is I don't want to just like do a program, check off the box, and then be like, all right, bye. Right? Like I want to be able to connect people to what's the next steps and start to build the community and then continue that community. Right? So even after you leave our program, you're still in touch with us. You're still working, with other organizations, and we've funneled you into other organizations that are towards your goals and your passions. So that's where I'm at right now, which is a super priority, is identifying organizations who can work, who are in the field of the TAIA population.
Okay. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I definitely would love to continue the conversation at some point. I can point you in the direction of some folks doing some things, particularly in the East Bay, because that's where I am.
That'd be great.
So,
And so again, the folks that aren't here, again, one has CPR. It's actually an LLC. So she's actually similar to what you do. She does go to certain events, she does table and things like that. But she does work with businesses and organizations, hospitals, any folks who basically need CPR training in order to bring folks on, to onboard them. And so she's actually been trying not only to work with different organizations in the Bay, but also around California, and then even getting out of California too. So I think she said that she had made some connections in Nevada, and some opportunities out there. Recently got brought on as a part of a grant to do some training here in the Bay Area. And so again, she also has a fiscal sponsor. I'm not sure. I want to say it's Good Rule. That's not yours, right? It's not your, okay, yes, I think Good Rule was her fiscal sponsor. But with that being said, she also has an LLC, one who has a nonprofit, Necessary Essentials of Life. She has, it's kind of like she creates community, but has meetings, discussions, workshops and such around everything from health awareness. She mentioned financial literacy. She mentions working with men. So she actually had a meeting last, I want to say maybe 3 weeks ago was when the Niners played. Things like something like that. But she had an event just for men. Like her emphasis is on mental health. And so that was what the discussion was about that day. So she brought out folks from the community who could talk about their relationship with mental health, but also, their stories, honestly. So they had some great stories. I actually was there that day. And then we have one guy who's Terrence brings, he has a nonprofit he wants to be able to work with at-risk youth, I want to say youth and young adults around building the skills that helped him to change his life around when he mixes upholstery, but everything around sewing and so forth. And so not just upholstery, but moving into, going more about sewing when it comes to fashion, or sewing when it comes to furniture, whatever it is, repairing stuff. So that is what got him out of the wrong direction. And so he wants to be able to have that. But also, like I mentioned, have a organization, a business, what that can sell, what they're making, or go to other companies and again say, okay, we'll make this for you guys, and this is how much we're charging, so on and so forth. But I'm missing anybody else.
Yeah. What's the senior center?
Felicia.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she also she has a nonprofit. She actually has over a nonprofit that's been around for, I want to say, more than 40 years. But she's been the ED for the last maybe 5 or so. And so right now she's dealing with a whole lot of stuff with regard to how the rain impacted her building and stuff. And it hit super hard a few weeks ago. But she, it's a large operation. They have their own facility and stuff already. They've been around for a while. So it's really about, I want to say, she kind of like pulled them out of the gutter in terms of like the tax everything was like not in disarray when she came on. And she had like 10 years of like, I understand. Right. And so now things are getting back then into good footing. She's really just trying to, tighten up the operation. But she's done a lot around COVID relief, helping folks getting testing and vaccination and stuff like that. But her primary population is working with seniors. I believe it's in Bayview. Right? Yeah.
I think, did you talk about Canyon?
Yeah. Necessary Essentials of Life.
So I mean, these are all, great movements. It sounds like you are like building like a collaborative like incubator here or something.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the way that it first was pitched to me from my managers was that we just want to be able to give folks the information that they can have in order to just improve their organizations wherever they're at currently, utilizing a lot of the information that is already in the house because our organization is literally going to be, they're going to have like the 50th anniversary this year. And so because it's, right. So because it's so, it's so large, I think we're at like 100 and something employees, maybe up to like 20 something different programs. The idea was that, okay, we can just work with the information that we have in the house. But what's became clear after the first cohort was we're so past a lot of the struggles that folks have when they're starting something that a lot of folks who are present, working in the different programs are like, I never have to start a nonprofit, right? I never have to start it. I could tell you what we're doing right now, but this is also, working with the technology I already know, working with business programs that's already there, and we're just kind of like keeping it going. And so what I started to do was to reach out to folks like yourself, or like actually had to like put it together, right? Brainstorm the mission, the vision, the whole thing, the ups and downs of that, bringing on folks, letting folks go. And so really just trying to get that type of experience in front of the folks who are here so that they can see what it looks like, how it works and so forth.
Yeah, for sure. All right, cool. Well, it's like, I've never had a child, but starting businesses, so raising children is whatever.
Right. I've heard that too. Right. Yeah. Word.
Relate to the lack of sleep, even though I don't have kids yet. But when I hear like moms and people talking, and dads talking about, the kids keep them up all night.
Right.
Sure. And then it's like a lot of us, we spend so much energy and time in the ideation and creation process. Get it out there, and it's like, all right, it's out there and it's launched and it's live. But what we don't realize is there's a whole lifetime in feeding and providing for and caring for.
Once you launch it, that's when the real work begins.
Exactly. Right. So that there's a support network for something like this is great. Yeah, it's great. Because I was a consultant prior to starting my own organization, and I don't know, maybe I did it to myself kind of insularly, but I felt really alone, trying to get this off the ground. And so that's a blessing to be able to have support and have reflections and mirrors around to provide that insight.
Right.
So thank you for having me. Maybe I can learn from you all.
Indeed, right?
Yeah.
Word. Well, if you could just share a little bit about, again, like how it started, where the initial, I want to say idea, but I would even say again, really getting to that place of, all right, I got to start writing the stuff down. I got to get folks around me who know this. Like, how did it all kind of get going?
Yeah, for sure. Well, if you want to go to the next slide, I won't go through the presentation, but I think there's some stuff in here that's relevant to the story. And so this kind of just shares about like background of where, to your point, how did it all get started? And I moved here from Chicago rather in 2016. And I moved here to work for a startup as a VP of operations, thinking like, getting out of corporate, being in the startup space, take your big, grow up, give up.
Right.
Didn't work out. But what I did do was gain a lot of valuable skills about startup. Because prior to that, I was in big corporate, kept collecting a paycheck and go on with my day.
Right.
But that transition was very helpful for me. And after 2 years of working in a startup for somebody else, I had some painful experiences in San Francisco. Right? Because the atmosphere, you know what I mean by that. Just having to come and commute and then getting off of 16th Street BART and then like just looking at all of the disparity going on. and recognizing like these people are not necessarily here for me. I'm feeling very isolated, and I just had to continue to trudge my own path. And then so I'm looking at a lot of these statistics in California, and it's one of the most liberal states, but it has so many disparities, right? Racial disparity, equity, financial. It's like everything. And so all of the research shows that Black males fail. And Black men. So given that there was an immediate lived experience problem that I was going through on a regular basis. And so because of that, I ended up having a blow up at my startup, feeling unheard and unreciprocated and taken advantage of. I ended up quitting. And really having to do my own, like take care of myself to the point where I could actually do for myself. And what came out of that was recognizing that not only do I need to do for myself, but as Black men, we need to do for ourselves as a whole.
Right.
And so, you know, you can go to the next slide, but creating a space was more so a precipice of that recognition. And so, yeah, I got a lot of feedback in the startup process around really considering going 501c.
Right.
Versus LLC. But as you can see in our mission, our first tenet is to invest in. Right. And so I have my own kind of systemic biases against nonprofit. Systematic, not the nonprofits. So,
Right.
But I do truly believe that as a society goes, we don't invest in Black. And we usually look at things like charity, what's the word I'm looking for? Goodwill. Right? But we're not talking about investing in the future. We're not talking about creating the next leaders. We are, right, in isolation, in our organization, right? And so I wanted to put forward a staunch beacon that said, hey, we're not doing this for charity. We're not doing this for goodwill. We're doing this because it's absolutely necessary, and we want to invest in that. We want to invest in our future. We think anybody who wants to contribute to that should invest. And so I fully believe that in the future, we're going to be on the stock. And so there's a little bit of a weird dichotomy there. It's like, oh, are we like paying Black men to be Black men? So that, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the crux of what we're doing when we talk about appropriation and assimilation, right? We're extracting value without an exchange, right? And so here the exchange should be first. Invest first, then the value that you extract, it's not as useful.
Right.
And so that's kind of the stance that we take behind the nonprofit versus the LLC. But we operate in a very similar manner, social enterprise. And so that's, every year somebody sits me down and is just like, you should really consider.
You can't talk, man. I just really gotta let you know what I really think.
And it's crazy because, that is the urge for our organization, and a lot of like community leaders and even agent folks in the government or the county of Alameda have been like, yo, if you were to formulate this nonprofit, we could get you $50,000 tomorrow. And I've really had to kind of sit with that.
Right.
Money on the other end of the string is always the thing. And from where I'm from, like, I'm always, it feels like I'm a fundraiser. As a founder of an organization that's for profit, like I have to go kill what I eat, excuse the phrase.
Right.
But in a way that's fundraising. And so it's still an interesting duality, but I've been holding steady on the LLC front. And so that's the backstory.
And then let me ask, because again, folks that are here are working with nonprofits again, and some aren't. But I do want to ask, like, what is the primary opportunity that the LLC structure allows for that, that makes you go that way. I'm imagining it is something around the funding part. Is it also maybe like the opportunity to be able to say so where the money is going? Whereas again, with the grants, it's like we gotta do what they say.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think a nonprofit can actually operate like a for-profit, except they just can't have any profit. But like IKEA is a nonprofit.
No.
IKEA is a nonprofit.
Have you heard that?
And
I have not
they're
heard
a
that.
Swedish nonprofit, and they sell hell shit and make hell of money.
You're absolutely right.
And so there are ways for it to be done, right?
Just sell your services.
But the reason why I think, as an LLC, it's a little bit, so you mentioned the freedom. Freedom is extremely important to our mission. The ability and the to be agile to the responsive or to the needs, be responsive to the needs of my own needs personally as a Black man, but also the needs of the community. I think having worked with most of our constituents and our client partners are nonprofit organizations. And as a capacity building organization, I launched the LLC in a capacity building consulting manner to build out a clientele, to gain visibility, to get revenue, all of these things. And I think the ability to do and say whatever I please is kind of it's a gift and a curse.
Right.
Because I'm very, like, you've been to our storytelling platforms, and I'm very forthcoming about what I will and won't do.
Say that again. Sorry.
And what I can and can't do, right? And so I'm just like, I'm transparent. I promote male vulnerability. You're gonna hear some curse words. I'm gonna tell it like it is, and you have to accept that if you want me in your space. And so having the confidence and the ability to walk in a room and know that you own your own domain is something that I can't replicate. Right? And having these conversations around grant money and funding and all of these things do, to your point, tie you to a lot of other people's objectives. And of course, there are unrestricted funds. We have gotten some unrestricted funds, which are great when you can get them. But as a major revenue stream, I found that, tying ourselves to other people's objectives really takes us off course where we're trying to. And it can be supplemental. Like, you can do things that align.
Right.
But it becomes a little bit more, it's a longer path to what you want to accomplish. Now, that being said, I think there's definite utility in making sure that you have connection to, and so I have a fiscal sponsor, to your point, from 501c3, because a lot of the grant work that we do comes through a fiscal sponsor. And so because we have that partnership, I feel less obligated to even trying to become a 501c3, which then gives me even more flexibility, because I can pick and choose what lanes I want to partner and collaborate with when it comes to the 501c3 mission and vision that we're working. But then I can also hold steadfast in what we can do with the monies that we generate.
Right.
And so diversification of revenue streams is then incredibly huge, which is the same thing for nonprofits. But I haven't actually seen myself as a fundraiser until recently.
Right.
Yeah, until recently, recognizing, like, trying to keep the lights on is literally raising funds.
Right.
It's just kind of a different ask or a different modality. And so I've had a lot of opportunity to work with nonprofit leaders to help consulting. So I'm a consultant in my former life. How I learned a lot of this business operations and transformation strategy. And so that's also why I'm like, I don't want to be a nonprofit, because I've worked with, in capacity building mode, a lot of nonprofits that bring in consultants to help them do the things that they're not able to do, to get them in the places that they're not able to get. or to even say the things they're not able to say.
Right.
And so with that, I kind of got like a dual lens that's kind of maybe a little skeptical of it, because I recognize a lot of value, a lot of revenue goes twice a year.
Right.
I'm sure it didn't start that way.
Right.
But you know, having that pathway and knowing that you have an agency that's there looking to partner with you to continue to support you in talking about town, the government. There's a direct correlation or a one-to-one in terms of nonprofits and funding. And I think that is extremely beneficial, because for me, I have to find it everywhere I go, right? And once you get a master or primary contract with a government agency, you kind of set for 5 years, whatever the case may be.
Right.
And so I think, you know, those differences prove to be challenging, because I think that's why a lot of people are get a nonprofit and we can get you a contract over here. And,
That'll be right. You got this and this.
But what I will say is I've had a magical time creating, and creating in a way that I know I wouldn't be able to do if I had board of directors that were tied to some funding, that were tied to objectives. And of course I have advisors, and I have objectives, and I have all these things, but I also have time.
Right. No, that's real. I think that is definitely, I would say, one of the benefits that people may or may not see. You know, when I'm thinking about the folks who have LLCs, I'm not sure if was their reason for going that route. But I imagine that it could be. I definitely imagine that it could be.
It could be. And so one way around that is to formulate a nonprofit under your LLC. Formulate your LLC under your nonprofit.
It's kind of debating.
Right.
With one of the programs that we're getting ready to start was should I separate it into an LLC? You don't have a continuity, if you can actually get contracts and go for specific revenue sources and build those. You can still do that within a nonprofit, but you're kind of on the fence going back and forth with that particular program.
Yeah, for sure. And that, you know, that additional revenue then can go right back to your nonprofit if you need it. And then you can also do things like, you know, for example, if we're using YCD as an example, and we have this huge conference room, like, oh, well, create this space. We need an office. Let's rent you an office space. And you can have this space and it'll be subsidized and you'll pay us. And so now your LLC is paying your nonprofit to take space at a discounted rate, and everybody wins.
Right.
And so there are ways to kind of move and jug that can be beneficial if you have both pathways. But then the challenge is, right? Are you fundraising? Are you catering to a board? Are you tied to objectives from the nonprofit? And then does that distract you from what you're trying to do?
So you have to definitely have the capacity to take care of both.
And some people don't actually do all the things that are required, but you know, people, not that I'm advocating for this, but you know, you can start a board with yourself, your cousin, and your mom if you want to.
Right.
And then you don't have to fundraise. You can use it as a pass-through if you want, or whatever the case may be. But I really say that I think it's about being intentional about what it is you want to accomplish.
Right.
It's not easy to form. I mean, it's relatively easy, but it's not easy to maintain a nonprofit.
Right. That's true. And I'm even thinking about the fact that you are reaching out to Black men. I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that you would probably have some more struggles with regard to getting the funding at times, because you know what I mean? So many of the funds are like, well, you have to also now. You can have Black men. They could be there. That's good.
Right.
But it also has to include to the point you go, dude, like, I can't take it, you know? Because if this is what I'm trying to do, I'm actually struggling to get that.
And that's, so it's a real point, but I will say, I face the same thing. Because a lot of the corporate organizations that we engage are like, yes, great.
Exactly. I
I
imagine.
support Black men.
Right.
Yeah, we have a huge constituency here. So,
Right.
and so I think, you know, the lens, the paradigm, what we're primarily trying to do is make a paradigm.
Yeah.
And this is why I invest in Black men is one of our, because I think what we're trying to say is just because we're here to support and uplift Black men doesn't mean we're detracting.
Mhm.
And so as a corporate organization goes, you provided all of these resources for people. And then you've given perhaps a Black ERG, right, which gives $1,500 to support all of the Black people in the organization.
Right.
And outside of that, nothing caters to them, right? And so to be able to separate yourself from saying, oh, we have to be inclusive and everybody has to get services and support. You're like, no, that is not true. Because even though everybody has access, not everybody gets support. Right? You know that is not true. Access and being able to actually get those things.
Yeah.
Doorway could be open, but if I can't get there,
Right.
like
Right.
so many barriers to our entry. And so trying to change the paradigm around, look, creating safe spaces in the workplace for Black men, or not even in the workspace, but send your Black men to these resources, right? And then provide them for them. And then you can start there, and we can work on the rest of this. And so I do face those challenges. A lot of people are like, okay, well, what about the women? Everybody wants to ask a question that kind of subverts, right? Because the idea is they're trying to uphold the situation. Recognizing that a lot of people aren't just out here scouring for Black men and just throw money at them.
Right. That's true.
And so it's been a challenge in trying to really change that paradigm. But fortunately, a lot of our nonprofit organizations, institutions really believe in the work. And we have built out a strong representation of partnership that then lends to, okay, I see what you're doing in the wellness space, and you have a lot of credible background. The conversation in the corporate space becomes a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
Becomes a lot easier to be, and I've also learned a lot over the course of my last 5 years. So like where I'm just knocking on doors and be like, hey, here's what I got, pay me. Like it doesn't really work like that, you know. There's a courtship, there's a dance, there's dating, there's all these things.
Right. There's dinner.
Yeah, for sure. And then there's also departments that deal with these things. Right? As a corporation, we have a department that takes care of social responsibility, not something that goes throughout our whole ecosystem. We just relegate it to a small department, which is telling in and of itself. But being able to get access to those partners, and so that's where the networking comes in. Because largely, you know, some larger corporations like banks will advertise social responsibility. Wells Fargo, for example, they're donating $1 billion to that community, whatever the case may be, like all of these things, right?
Right.
Like, where's that money? Because I'm part of that community. Shit,
Right.
But the thing is, if you can go there and you advocate and you are, you know, pressing them and doing the things, fundraising, then they have the resource.
Mm-hmm.
They're just very tight.
Right.
And they go to the people who are like arm's length. Like, oh, we've got this $100,000 or $200,000 pot for corporate social responsibility for the quarter. But because it's not our main function, we're not really going to go out there and do the due diligence to find all of these other people. We're going to find the people that we know work with us already. Mm-hmm. And so it's just a matter of a phone call and be like, hey, you guys got any projects going on? We need to get rid of $50,000. And I've heard this.
Literally.
Yes.
Get rid of. Wow.
Well, in that sense, because they haven't spent it and they're not doing anything internally to promote social responsibility. So they just want to piggyback off of what other people are doing.
Yeah.
So to find those windfalls is a game. It's network.
Mhm.
But that's kind of like a corporate nonprofit thing. It's like, we've got this money. We got to find people to do with it. And so being in that position to receive that.
So with the program, what are the, I know, Jermaine, before you came, you started to mention some of the services that you provide. What are some of the core like services and programs as well as like the demographics as far as age?
Yeah, for sure. So maybe I have some information. If you want to move forward on the slide, let's see what next one. Okay. So don't take this because I'm working on getting it patented or trademarked, but community as a service is what we provide as our primary offer. And so within that, then we are a peer-led organization, peer certified. So we provide peer support, many different facets of that. We also provide a lot of wellness programming and work. And so we have 6 official programs now, which might not sound like a lot, but for a small organization, it's a lot. And so we have a Black Men Support Group. We call it Black Men Management. We have a media club. We have our storytelling platform. We have what we are now. We haven't released some of this stuff yet, but we're working on. So we have a wine social that we're doing, which is also dubbing it as a conversation series between Black men and Black women. And we have a program for media and podcasts. So we have somebody that teaches what's the term? Production, audio production. Right. Art therapy. We have an art therapist who leads an art therapy program. And there's one more that I'm missing. So that's 5 of this.
I'm thinking about the yoga.
Oh, of course. And yoga. Yes, that's usually the first one I do. And so even within the yoga, so the yoga has been long established, and we actually have some contracts with some clients to come in and utilize trauma-informed yoga modalities in their constituent. But now that we've kind of broken that lane open, we're working with a lot of other practitioners to help expose the community some of the other modalities. So we're working on Reiki and somatics, so body work, and then also massage therapy. And so those 3 things are new that we're working on developing this year. So hopefully by the end of this year we'll have 10 programs. And I think that's where the Black Panthers started. I think 90. But recognizing like being able to cater to a lot of different needs is part of our challenge and a part of our advantage, because we're so agile as our community goes. They can give us direct feedback, and then we can pivot immediately. Which is how a lot of these programs are born. So when we talk about community as a service, we first start by cultivating community, growing that community, and then providing agency within that community. So all of the people, all the practitioners, all of the things that we do come from people with those skills, that lived experience, or that credibility in the community. Right. Like, I'm not trying to build any of this. Storytelling platform, yeah, I built that. But as much as I can teach an emotional resilience course or get certified in yoga, I'm not. Right. No, I hear that. That'll be a lot. It'll be a lot. But there are people in the community who have that ability, but don't necessarily have the agency, don't necessarily have a business background, or don't necessarily want to be like a business for that matter. Like, as an entrepreneur, I think so much of us get confused between being an entrepreneur and doing things that we're passionate about as a side hustle and actually starting a business. Yeah, they're 2 different things. Very different. Right? I can sell paintings, but that's not a business. It makes business for me. So it's not running a business that employs it. Those things are.
So with the different programming, well, I guess it's a two-part question. One with individuals and members, right? Who join. Are those members, are they the ones then that are like developing and administering the program? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. And then what is the programming, for example, like because I know you mentioned maybe a podcasting, teaching the audio production or the storytelling platform. What does that look like as far as, is it like 2 cohorts? Is it like we're going to start up something, or can people like kind of jump in the middle of a current program or something, or how does that look?
So that's a great question. We have several different ways of operating. So we have a general co-working space that we allow people to just come to and collaborate. And so when it comes to like things like the media and the podcasting, we have all the resources. We actually lend it out. And then for those who want to actually go deeper, we will sit down with you and work out a training program or schedule. But we don't have a cohort for something like that. But we do, for example, with our emotional resilience, we have a 6-week course, and that's cohort led. And then that cohort becomes grandfathered into our membership, and then we provide peer support on an ongoing basis. So we talk about life cycle management. Right? We try to define all the different entry points with which our population can come in contact with the space. And then we try to make some kind of meaningful engagement, whether that be through a course or a storytelling platform or an event. So we have a lot of free events in the community, which is part of the building. Every month we throw a community potluck. I don't know if you've ever been.
Yeah.
And that's free. And so the idea is that people contribute, right? People from the community come and contribute. And that's the whole concept of Create the Space is we're here to provide the agency. We're here to provide the development, the workforce development. We're here to provide the lane. We're not here to do all the work. We're here to uplift you as a Black man to help you do what you want to do best, which is the peer support.
And then you have like a physical location?
Yes, we have
Like a shared space?
we are co-working out of a Black co-working space called OSAP, and so they've been very, and this is why I love our people, because when you connect with your own people, they're willing to do things that others do. And Oakstop has been very gracious about letting us use their whole. I mean, like we have the whole. I mean, not officially, but we have it.
But on the low, like lightweight.
Like we run yoga in there. We got book club. We got so our members are paid members because we are a for-profit organization. But that membership then goes to all of the development and support resources that we provide, including the space. So if you don't have an office space, but you work for yourself, always just come to our space, work there, and network, and collaborate, and do all of these things. And so we've tried to touch on like a lot of the main things that people need, and do a little bit of everything without having to do all of it. And then we do a lot of referrals. And so we started off by having in-house therapists, which became very tough to manage. The demand just kept outpacing.
Right.
And I'm just like, well, I'm kind of volunteering. I'm not really getting paid full grip for this. And it's like, my patient load is already full. And so of the handful of people that we were working with, we could no longer make referrals. And so now we had to change that model because we don't have enough revenue to keep in-house therapists to just be like, yo, come on, see me.
Right. We got it.
And so we do a lot of referral. And this is where our nonprofit partner.
Yeah. Want to go to the next one?
Yeah, so this is really just more a testament to the community building, right? And so we launched in 2018, and in 2020, we've been activated to speak, by 2022, we were activated to speak at Accenture's Black Tech Deal. because of some of the work that we're doing. And then in June, we actually just got notified that we're going to receive an award on Juneteenth from an organization. So all of this, I think I put up here because it's a testament to the grit that is required when it comes to building community. And I think nonprofits kind of have a leg up in that because kind of community probably comes to you. But as a for-profit organization, that's not the case. Like, people are like, for-profit? All right, whatever, what you trying to sell? You know?
Right.
And so really trying to change that paradigm around, no, like we're not selling anything other than the idea that you should invest in Black people. And here's why. And so going from door to door, talking about support services, talking about capacity building, because when we're agile, like I said, we're able to resource the community. We can solve any problem. And so we lead with that as a corporate organization, as a Google, as a whatever you want to look. If you're looking for consulting, we can provide a solution, a community-based solution, by sourcing talent from the community.
Right. Yeah. And so I even think, because my mind is bringing what you just said about having a space for Richmond, because we just moved there last year, and so I'm like, what's happening in Richmond? But I'm also thinking that was also potentially an opportunity that was created because, again, who's already in house, and like, are you down to do? Or maybe he was already like, yo, like, yeah, I'm trying to do this thing, and they're like, yeah,
that's largely how it works. Is I'll put out an ask, and then somehow the energy propagates. I put an ask out to the universe. But then people are inspired by the idea that they see we're able to create for ourselves, and we keep coming out with new shit. And so everybody's just like, oh, well, what about this? What about this? And then my response is,
right.
I'm not going to build it for you.
Right.
But I will lend my expertise. Creating space will provide the agency, will help you get into the places that you want to get into. We'll support your building. And that, I think that is how we create future leaders, and we invest in Black men. It's not just about money, right? You invest financially, but if you really don't care, that's different.
Right.
And I definitely a lot of leadership building components that I see in it, in the model that I'm hearing you describe as, and also that the holistic approach of the wellness. Like, that's something that hasn't been, we all know it hasn't been historically like looked at or dealt with, but like it's something that's becoming like more popular now.
Yeah.
But to like see like a space that's dedicated for Black men to be able to come, like I'm thinking about like the racial population, that's why that's in the game, and that's something like is extremely new to that population. Therapy, right? Like you saw that, right? That was the whole norm if you're in prison. Like is you don't, if you're going to a therapist, there's something wrong with you. You saw. So now that it's started to change on the outside world, but people are coming out, and that's still the mentality on the inside. Exactly. So as they're coming out, but then you realize with all these stresses, the mental health components, like you're coming out and you have no money, no housing, no support system, and you're like, well, what am I supposed to do? Right? And now you're stressed out, so you're hustling, you're doing these things, you're going back to what you knew, but you never have that opportunity or the space to be able to come together with other people who be like, look, I understand you going. I understand these barriers and challenges. I was just there last year, or that's a lived experience, and the peer support components. Right? But then having a space where you can do that, and we're like, for us, we're creating that space from a virtual component, but that's not the same.
Yeah.
Right. When you're actually able to sit down, it's like when we first did the mixer. I walked into YCD, and you got some incense burning, you got some music playing, right? And we're sitting down at the table, and we're all talking, and like a lot of the conversation about like God and spirituality and some other stuff. It's like, yeah, that's a totally different setting than if you walk into like corporate America.
Right. Sure.
But that's the space, and then that camaraderie, and then the trust, right? And the rapport building that you get in those common spaces. And so, as you're talking and about what you guys are doing, I'm continuously thinking about like the population I serve and the value that can have, and be able to create that. and the idea generation and the ability to be able to start looking at like a lot of people come out of this. I can't say everything, but a lot want to start their own thing. They want, and so, but where do you go to like meet and network and connect with?
Didn't even need to, right? Like, because the opportunities to get a job are
It's
so
more
scarce.
difficult, and there are those barriers. And so they're like, you know what? I'd rather just start my own, so I don't have to worry about an employer, 50 employers, telling me no, right? Regardless of fair chance ordinances and all these things. So, that's the entrepreneurship, but you also need leadership development,
For sure.
and you also need like coping mechanisms, all these things, and understanding like there's going to still be a tremendous amount of no's, right? There's still going to be a tremendous amount of stressors, but where you can also go to alleviate those.
Sure.
And that's that wholeness.
One of our client partners, have you heard of Black Men?
No.
I haven't either.
Okay, well, they're one of our client partners, going on 2 years now, and they are an organization primarily focusing on Black men in the reentry space out in the county. They're about 13 years old, but they just got a new ED 2 years ago, and this ED was recently re-entered 3 years prior. Or 3 years ago, and then I don't know, somehow between like getting released and like 6 months, he became the executive director of this nonprofit, which, I think there are some bridge programs working to help those people. But since then, I as a client, I've gotten to know him intimately, and he shared a lot of things with me, like from a mindset perspective. It's hard to understand if you don't have lived experience, because working with him, I was creative space was positioned with Black Men Speak to do capacity building and wraparound support services as they kind of get going. And the ED is getting his feet on the ground. And so we were supporting him in particular. And I learned so much because he would tell me, he's like, yeah, he's a 58-year-old man. Was incarcerated for 34 years. Released in 2019. He would tell me, I'm only 3 years old. I'm only 3 years old out here. I'm a kid on the block. And everything is new and shiny. He was like, I'm moving and shaking. I don't know what's what, but everything looks shiny.
Right, everything.
So he was like, I'm going here. I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to do this. And it just dawned on me, like, the lived experience is so different that he's actually trying to live out a brand new life while also trying to build a business and also do everything for the first time. Like just trying to figure out your own self-regulation, much less managing a business. And so like even those obstacles, like inherent to people running them, are not always visible. Because I'm working with them for almost a year and a half. For the first year, I was so frustrated. What is going on? But it took me so long to because I didn't share that lived experience.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely critical to understanding how to navigate and work with people like because they have valuable contributions to be made only if you do things and then give them the proper guide rails. Exactly. So that's kind of been the experience, is really taking that and then being like, okay, how do I take this to a micro scale and be like, everyone needs support. Everybody has something to offer. As a Black man, you don't have to have just come from jail, which is why we don't specify who we support. Your only qualification is that you're a Black man. We stop at 15 officially for TAU, but because we don't really work with children and that. On a one-off basis, people bring their children. We try not to promote that. A lot of liability. But everybody needs support in whatever fashion, way, or reason, because as Black men, we're constantly under attack. Whether you just came out of jail or you've been like a model citizen working in corporate and paying all your taxes, like this person is probably just as bad off as this person mentally because they've been bombarded with a lot of false truths about life, right? And so trying to get both of these people in context. Harvard needs to meet the streets.
Right.
Yeah.
you know, I'm sure that a lot of us think that we do know what they think, why they do what they do, you know, motivations. That's all it is. It's, you know, all these simplifications of it. But I think, you know, like once we start to really have those relationships with those folks, they can teach us a whole lot more about, you know, yeah, that's not how we do it. That's not why we do it. It's not how it started. You know, this is, you know, this is something that they can share best rather than us kind of like speculating from the outside and giving our 2 cents all the time.
Yeah, and I think it provides a lot of when you're able to go in with that openness. I think you can connect and you can make some meaningful change. But it does. I will say that it becomes challenging to really like be effective and keep a timeline and like some of these other things. And you're like, oh, I need to get this done. What I realize is a lot of people that we work with, a lot of our community members, it takes a while for whatever that's coming out of their mouth sometimes to actually come into practice. Because even with me, like I gotta say it, and I gotta convince myself, and I gotta believe it, and then like all of these things, and you're not practiced at that, and you don't have the support. It's easy to say something, but it's hard to get there. Yeah. And we're not taught a lot of this stuff. We're not taught about starting a business in school. We're not taught about financial literacy. We're not taught about how to navigate the prison systems or to even stay out of the prison system. I don't even know if I was taught what the rules and the laws were in the United States.
Find out after.
Right. Well, I can't do that.
You know? Now you're trying to figure out how to undo it.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Didn't know that. We're like, oh, but that's not an excuse. That doesn't make sense because nobody taught me.
Right. I'm hearing that. One thing that's coming to mind is around, like you mentioned, the fundraising, right? So what I've seen is a lot of folks do, you know, the grant writing, right? So it's a matter of, you know, joining email newsletter list, seeing them when they hit the press, if you will. Okay, we have these deadlines. Got to get going. I got my homie over here. I got this homie that can help me put it together. We got 3 weeks. Given that isn't your primary means of, you know, quote unquote, raising funds, what does it look like to raise funds in your capacity? And how do you think that could also be effective for someone who has a nonprofit?
So I will say that is actually one of our arms, revenue generating arms, and I have a grant writing team on the team, largely because I'm not fundraising.
Right.
And so grants, to your point, are something that I've kind of built support around, and it's an ongoing thing. So we have a spreadsheet every month. We come in with new grants, what partners that we can have that can potentially support it, and I try to write at least one grant. And sometimes it's not possible given like the size, scope, or limitation, as there are a lot of limitations that prevent nonprofit or for-profit organizations from actually getting some of these grants, unrestricted, not the unrestricted. And so identifying partners who are willing to support from a fiscal agency process. That's also, it's not as easy as you would think for people, especially people who are actually running nonprofits legitimately with bylaws and boards and all of these things. So you kind of have to really find some niche that you can fit in that aligns with the mission, the vision, the value, and then you know, makes it through the board and like all of these things to be like, okay, we're willing to go and stick our neck out for you, be a fiscal agent or a sponsor, and then write these grants with you in partnership. And so that in and of itself, building some of those relationships and cultivating those. I have now 3 nonprofit organizations that, depending on what the needs are. Oh, this is an RFP for like workforce development, and I have a private organization I would go for, consult with them and say, like, we have the capacity to do this. This is something that I know that as an organization we can support. work like that. And so on a regular basis, that is something that we're looking for. So that's hugely important. But in terms of other, I mentioned the corporate social responsibility. I'm constantly, maybe I do fundraising. I mean, it just looks different.
Right.
But like, I'm constantly, every month, I have a reminder on my calendar, like collate or, collect all of the new emails and contacts that I've gotten over the last month. Send out an update email as to what we're doing, the progress, a deck, and inquire about any capacity building needs for instance. And so that's a part of my fundraising strategy. And I've probably raised about $50,000 last year, doing cold emails like this. And
so you're saying like these are connections that you've made, again, different events, different opportunities. People are gathered, you have an opportunity to share.
you know what is also a great resource is when you're on a Zoom conference and whatever the conference may be, and you got 100 people in there, I'm going down there and I'm looking at all of those people and their emails and who they're associated with in those calls. And I'm taking down those names because I may have never talked to them. They may have not even said anything in the Zoom call. But best believe they might receive an email from me saying, "Hey, it was a pleasure to meet you in whatever meeting that was the other day, and I really liked blah blah blah. I would love to follow up with you." And so I'm like, that's kind of yeah. And so just building out that list of contacts that and not everybody replies. Email culture out there is terrible.
Yeah, we get so many, so it's really hard to be on top of, right?
But ingenuity like this, right? Like it's there, it's accessible, it's right at your fingertips, and so like I have that reminder on my calendar.
No, because yeah, and I think that that's important to mention too, because what I have done is just being very cognizant of what's happening, whether it's Instagram or it's Facebook or Eventbrite. Sometimes it's Meetup app, but there's definitely to some degree, I know my wife feels it. It's just so many things going on, and so it's like, okay, well, I want to go to this. I would love to bump into somebody over here. There are those people that you end up reconnecting with, so you're like, oh, you're here. And they're like, yeah, you're here. And so then, the relationship just kind of gets a little bit of a push. But apart from, like you just mentioned, the physical events, there are, like you said, virtual ones. And then you just even mentioned that being intentional about checking who's in there, like I said, where they're at, where they're from. What I recognize too, whether it's LinkedIn or Facebook, the connections, right? So it's like, oh, you're part of this with what's the name? Cool. I know what's the name too. We'll probably, have a time where we can all touch base together. But yeah, I just want to speak to that because I've only seen so many ways that people have stated, this is how I network. This is how I get out there. In terms of what I just mentioned with social media or just the internet, what are some of the things that you use in order to know, oh, this is what's happening, this is what's coming up, and I should probably go check that out?
Yeah, maybe I'm pretty good at this networking thing. I'm going to give myself some kudos, but like to your point, I think I really don't. I'm an introvert. It takes a lot of energy for me to be out in spaces, and so I have to be very deliberate about what I want to do. And so I've seen, like, I have a buddy who's a nonprofit. He raises a lot of money, like millions of dollars. But the man, I feel like, doesn't sleep. He's at every fucking event. He's across the bridge. He's back. He's across the bridge. He's back. He's like, I'm not trying to do that. I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to work smarter, not harder. And being in touch is important, but I want to be intentional. So I don't go to a lot of events. Only ones that speak out to me, or that are going to have people that I think I should. But I would say there's like social media. I try to get involved. I try to follow like I'll do a search for organizations or things that are relevant to the work that we're doing within the space. So we, for example, launched in Chicago. We had a team for you in Chicago in December.
Right.
But prior to that, there was a lot of ground letting work and trying to figure out, all right, where are we going to be? How are we going to get our partnerships on the ground? How are we going to get people in the venue? Creating community starts with activating community. So how do we do that? And that's like, all right, well, we've got to find the people who are active in the community who are doing things. So looking for people that are hosting things, people who are that are storytellers, that have good followings, influencers. And then the organizations that have social media pages that we want to get involved, following all of them, sending them DMs. Like I have somebody on my team who sends DMs every day. Like, hey, saw what the work that you're doing. Would love to get in contact. And so random meetings are popping up on my calendar all the time with organizations. And I'm like, who is this? Oh, yeah, somebody set that up. And I think, the DM strategy, like maybe it's frowned upon from a dating perspective, but
But since it's not dating.
yeah. And so I that is something that we leverage all the time. The other thing is looking at annual. So like if YCD sends out an annual report, I'm scouring it to go to the financial page to find out who funded, who was partnering with, who supported in this annual report, who was named, and then I go to them. And I do the same research. I look at their email and find out who funded them and who supported them. And so I get a kind of a picture of, all right, this organization has 15 grant organizations that are funding, and half of them look like this. So more than likely, they're not going to be interested, or vice versa.
Right.
And so this is like the scouring and the turning over all the stone, but the access is there. Like the annual reports are public information. So if you can finally go to the website, all that stuff is there. It just takes the due diligence. And so you have somebody scouring these things for you. So.
Wow. Never thought about annual reports. Or even like you just mentioned, now to some degree the direct messenger stuff to some degree, because I would say, as opposed to you, and again, my wife can't stand it, but I love being out. If I can network 5 days a week, tell me where to go. And you know what I mean? Like I love it, man. I'd be, especially my sister over here, I'm like, yo, there's this thing coming, like, you should check it out. That'll be dope. She's like, yeah, no, man. yeah, I got one. Yeah, you did tell me about it. I was looking at it. Right, stuff like that. But it's just not. But what I recognize even in those spaces is that there are people who are like, I never do this. I don't like it. I'm so uncomfortable. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to say it. And even when I find myself in those spaces where I felt like, I could have worded that better, or I could have said this, I could have, been a little more confident. I could have been a little bit more forthcoming with like what I do or have done and so forth. At the end of the day, it is something that I do appreciate. But again, you're just really highlighting some of the things that people who don't like to be at all the different things can nonetheless still do by virtue of, like we said, analyzing, public documents, and seeing where there's a lot of stuff that can literally just happen on social media or via email, and you don't have to be.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said for being organized. Like not everybody's organized, not everybody's skill set, but getting somebody who can help you get organized, because like having a spreadsheet of like primary, secondary, and tertiary contacts, I will have my team spend hours contributing to like, all right, you met somebody, put them in the spreadsheet. Right. When did you contact them? What was the topic about? And what's the next time? Whatever the case may be, so that over the course of a year, we have one place to go. Right. And then at the end of that year, now I have about 200 contacts I can put on the email list and be like, hey, here's my deck. Here's what we've done for the last year. I know you're working on some of these things. How can we collaborate? But the legwork is like, I don't want to go home and like try to scour through all these business cards and be like, what? Right. So just like putting together a spreadsheet, a contact spreadsheet.
That makes sense. And so even Bobby, like, my imagination goes that you would naturally probably want to be more introverted, but do you feel like you would be or are open to doing some of the, if you will, legwork of networking? Like, how would you naturally go on about networking and getting contacts and so forth?
Yeah, I'm similar to you. I'm introverted. I don't mind public speaking.
Mhm.
Like we have like our entry simulations. And so we host them in front of large audiences and they're an experiential workshop. And so I'm perfectly fine public speaking and networking, but I'm very selective.
Mhm.
Not because, well, I would say the biggest reason I'm very selective is because the lack of time building the infrastructure and organizing and getting everything set up so I have a solid foundation and infrastructure to build upon is really like the stage that I've been at over the last few months, especially working full time. So I got my regular 9 to 5 job, which is usually more than 40 hours. I do a bunch of other volunteer work on, some different criminal justice reform boards and some other councils and things. And so then like the time left over is where I'm working on building out the infrastructure. So that's why we're finally at the stage where we're getting a lot of this infrastructural stuff, especially the technology, like we started and then we had to completely overhaul. It's like after the beta and I was like, that sucks. But
Change management.
yeah. So, I mean, we've had to make those pivots and make those changes, which have not thrown us all the way back to square one, but definitely 2 steps forward, 1 step back, which has drastically limited my time. And so that's the biggest reason for me as far as like not networking as much as I would like. To combat that, one of the things that like we just started doing last semester, we had our first intern. This semester we have potentially 7 interns. I'm going to be, me and a few of my team members, we're going to be interviewing and have a little
outreach strategy right there.
That's what the plan was, right? So we did a cohort last November, and we're working with formerly incarcerated individuals and teaching them skills in this cohort. One of the things was we're teaching them advocacy skills and networking skills, and so it was like while we were teaching them skills that they can use to put on their resume and building their resume with them as well.
Yeah.
And removing some of these barriers, we wanted to create that win-win. And so they were gaining stuff while they were helping us build out the spreadsheets that we were just talking about for our outreach calls. And they were starting, get that experience of doing that outreach. We're taking that first cohort that we just did, we just finalized all the outcomes and the after action reports, and now we're going to also be implementing that as part of our work with this next group of interns to help us build out those contacts.
And they're on TikTok, they're on Instagram,
and I'm not.
Like I had somebody tell me the other day, it was my sister actually, she's 26, just turned 26. And we were having a conversation and she was like, oh yeah, I rarely post or get on social media, on Instagram. I was like, what? She was like, yeah, it's just so outdated and people are just, it's all advertisements now and I can't really control my feed. She was like, yeah, I'm on TikTok. Like,
Right.
I don't even know if like, we have an account. Somebody set it up, but like
It's there.
That's the thing. That's what we are at, and that's why like we have the infrastructure there, but now we need to push the content out. And like so, I've been collecting the content, organizing it, and getting it together. But that's the other spot about the networking where I'm lacking is there's only so many of me, right? And to get to all these different things, that's where I can also be getting more content to be able to keep pushing it. And so I have to start striking that balance, which is why I was saying with this first grant, I'm really looking at not if, but when I'm going to be leaving my job so that I can devote this time fully to Pier 1 and what we go.
And I think content is king, especially if you're talking about take.
Right. Yeah.
If you're talking about take, I mean,
That's why
we
when
need
I
to
was
be the
looking at
metaverse.
Instagram, exactly.
Like, we need to be doing content for the metaverse. They need to be in like VR goggles like these things.
Right.
And I'm just like,
Wow.
I'm still trying to figure out Instagram.
So it's a real? What?
But it is, and it's been kind of the bane of my existence, but it's also been so necessary because it's become a mainstream business tool that while it's shifting, like it's been like really critical to a lot of people's visibility.
Right.
The one thing I was gonna say is like you said it sounds like you create a lot of activations, and so for somebody who doesn't like to just go and do and network, like maybe this is kind of why we started creating community events, because we bring the community, and then we create a lot of content, and disseminate that out.
Right.
So we'll have one major event a month or something. And get a videographer, photographer, like try to get local news or do a news press release or whatever the case may be, and then shot that out on my listserv of contacts. Like annual report, who's funding, who's in the social responsibility area, what are their emails, add them to the spreadsheet, email everything. And that's kind of like the rinse and repeat process.
I wanted to actually, that brings back of something you were saying earlier, and I was writing something and I missed part of it. And it was when you were speaking about corporate responsibility, and then you mentioned some things that you were doing. Jermaine had asked, like, I forget exactly what the question was, but it was something to the effect of what sort of like fundraising things are you doing outside of the grants component? And you mentioned, you said you thought you had raised around $50,000 last year doing that, and it wasn't like a cold email or something, but it had some element of that.
Yeah.
So what can you go back and touch on that, like what you were doing for that fundraising?
So
Or how you were
let's
doing that?
advance the slides. Let me see if there's. So these are some of our partners, but if you keep going forward, next one, I think there's a video on here. Next one. All right, so if you play this real quick, it's only 1 minute.
You're okay, brother. You're okay, brother. And I think sometimes that's what we need as black men, for another black man to come into your space and say you're okay. And I understand you, and I understand the space that you're in and what you're going through, but I'm here for you.
And I'll tell you why I want to play this after I answer your question.
You're okay, brother. And I think sometimes that's what we need as black men, for another black man to come into your space and say you're okay. And I understand you, and I understand the space that you're in and what you're going through, but I'm here for you, whatever you need, and you're okay.
So I can see myself like really honing in and really sharpening myself to the point where I'm at that state where I always wanted to be as a kid, and that's like to say being my own hero. Yeah.
So I'm witnessing something right now, and I don't know if y'all are with me in this. But this brother has said he's never experienced this several times. Right? Never experienced this before. Right? So as you sit up there, what are you feeling?
So the reason why I shared this is because I think we led by talking about
okay,
our first program.
You're okay, brother.
And there's some imagery from that storytelling event in that video. But that doesn't extend just to the program. I think that extends to the fundraising. You have to be able to tell a compelling story to get somebody's and capture somebody's attention. Subsequently, their resources. And it's easy to have a conversation. It's easy to just be like, oh, we're doing all these great things. I can email a deck or whatever the case may be. But creating some like visceral response is kind of like the game changer when it comes to fundraising. And so a lot, like for example, this project that we did, produce this video, we raised $20,000 to do it. And it was largely based on, well, when we talked about a lot of it, like corporate social responsibility, trying to find some of these contacts, but then also sharing visuals and the videos of the testimonies of what we've actually done. And then being very specific about the ask, because I think a lot of people don't really know what to ask, or on the receiving end, people don't know what you're asking. And so I've been coached in that, in terms of like, I tend to be one of these people who are like kind of feel out the room and like, oh, we're doing these things, so hit me up if you like, kind of thing. Like, I'm not pressuring people. But my leadership has just been like, no, you need to be very specific about what you want and what you're gonna do. And if they don't want to do it, they don't want to do it. But you don't give them that room to be like trying to figure out where you're coming from or where they play, right? Because that's too much work, right? And so being very intentional about like my emails, I'm trying to get them shorter. I'm trying to get them shorter. But like I put a lot of I make my emails look like a newsletter, like regular emails. They come from me, not coming from MailChimp. But like I'll have a banner, I'll have like a personalized, whatever the case may be, I'll have a quote, whatever it is, and visuals to support whatever narrative. And that's all at the footer or whatever. So people can skip through it if they don't want to look at it. But this is when when I say cold outreach, I've usually met in like 1 degree some of these people, or somehow they've heard of the organization. But this is really like storytelling outside of being in person. And that's kind of where the money comes. Yes.
It's bringing back to mind what Candace brought up to us about her, about Be Something Collective, and how a lot of funding now is and especially at the apex of COVID-19 was just kind of like being brought to her rather than her having to go and get it. And part of that, in some respect, was her going to get it by putting out the content that says this is what we do, right? Which again emphasizes what you're bringing up, as having things like this is one thing, to have content on social media that is from the cell phone and so forth, but when you create some type of literally movie, that's a whole other level of being able to share what you do with people who may not know about you, may have heard about you, but came across it in this whatever capacity. And so now they're able to see, but I think what had come out of that conversation, one of the things that came out of the conversation was having some visible means by which you are and can document what you do, so that it's not a mystery. It's not like, we kind of, it's like, no, like, yeah, look at it. That's what we do. This is where we're at. This is who we talk to. This is what the conversation was like. This is what it looks like when we're out there. And even to her point, the guy mentioning that, which I'm sure that a lot of people can relate. I don't ever see this doing something that people can go, what? I've never seen that before. But she was saying what she was doing with her social, not with her social media, but what she was doing with her organization, the way that she was doing it. People like, I ain't never seen nobody do that. Don't get me wrong. That's homelessness organizations, right? Who are fighting for the unhoused in many ways. They ain't doing that.
Yeah.
And that is something that makes people go, okay, I'm gonna pay a little bit more attention. I'm gonna follow. But what ended up happening was she would walk into rooms, or she would get calls. People already know. Okay, so I've been following you for this many weeks, this many months, this many years. So I already know. Tell me what y'all need to do, what y'all trying to do, how much you'll need. and we'll figure it out on our end and how we can make that happen. And so, in some respects, it's interesting, but in some respects, social media, apart from the DMs and stuff like that, is literally like, I would say, a form of networking, because you're putting yourself in front of people you don't know, even though you're not physically putting yourself in front of those people.
And one thing that I don't want to say I took it for granted, because I think, you know, there's levels to everything. And, you know, you can't start at 100, or maybe you can. I didn't. But like the paying for results. And I don't even know if it's paying, but actually investing in results. Because in the beginning, it was just a matter of like, just document and try to get as much as possible. And it wasn't really good stuff. It was not good. It was, everything is good, but it's like, there's poor quality. You know, you're doing it on a 1080p camera when they've got 12K cameras now, like all kinds of stuff. But I will say this: the moment I started investing in social media is when things changed. Just because of the level of what's appeared to be professional. People were hitting me up being like, "Yo, these pictures are dope. Like, yo, that." Like they like a lot of our county constituents. The reason why they capacity build with us is because they like our presentation. They like how we do things. They like like I've had 3 organizations hit me up to be like, "Yo, do you develop websites? Can you develop our website?"
Interesting. Yeah, that's not what I was planning.
But it really, it's like, it's visibly made a difference to have like, because I remember our first website, and it's evolved, and it still needs to evolve, but like the quality of images and videos on our website now, and the designs and the images on there are light years from where they were 3 years ago. And that's a testament to our growth too, because you can't just start out like this all the time. But I will say that has changed people's perception, because they look at it and they're like, "Oh, this is dope, but I want to know more," just based off of a visual.
Right. No, it's real. You know, one thing that definitely reminds me of is what people say about websites, is because, you know, and I see it, and that's one thing that we come across and, you know, discuss in our cohort, is because, you know, some folks, like you, even what you were just saying, one thing that came to mind was investing in it versus, if you will, kind of like casual social media engagement, right? Where it goes like, "This is what I got, you know. All right, let me post it. You know, I'll share like a little bit of something." And then there's people that go, "You know, we're going to take our time. We're going to be very intentional. We're going to look at all the footage and grab the most poignant pieces. We're going to make sure that the camera looks nice. We're going to make sure this, because," and I don't know if you've seen it much, but, you know, you can pull up a website like, nope.
Can't even get through the first page.
Look at, what is that? You know, now it says the name, it says the mission, it says all that, but the photos are so bad where it goes, y'all ain't there.
Yeah.
We're not there. And I like the product, or I like the service, but this looks bad. And it really is a matter of, sometimes it is as simple as the camera that you guys are working with, which again, sometimes it's not as simple as just like getting into the camera. This camera lenses are like a whole bunch of money. But when it comes out like that, it goes, dude, like, you know, I don't even know the quality, but this is quality. So let's go see, you know.
Right. It's
I'll
like
take a
barrier
risk.
to entry that you don't need to have. You don't have to.
Right.
Because people will judge the fuck out of you.
Right.
It's like, yo,
Right.
you didn't even get past the first page. Well, yeah, there's a reason.
Right. Right. It's like, whose phone was that? It's like, oh, yeah, you know, and what version, right? It's like the iPhone, like 5, right?
It has taken me a lot of like, because I'm a person who would be like, yo, but I do the work. Like, fuck all the glamour and all
Right.
this and
I know
shiny
what you mean.
things. Like, yo, I'm in these streets.
Right, and that's what matters, right?
But
it's true.
yeah,
It's true.
it's true. It's value for sure. And I had to accept that. Like, it wasn't something that I came in thinking, knowing, or even appreciating. I'm just like, my own social media is inactive. I got 2 pictures on there. Facebook, I haven't checked Facebook in 3 years. Like, I'm not posting. I'm not out here being like, people are always telling me like, you should be capturing some of this stuff. Like, put it on and get some pictures, like on your iPhone. I never put my ex-girlfriend, she was just like, you never take pictures. Like, I have 1,000 pictures of you. You don't have any pictures of me in your phone. I'm like, I'm here. I'm loving on you right now. Like, but I'm here. Right. And so I had to really embrace that because the young folks talking about Tay, like, these are the places they're going. If you're talking about programming and if you're an influencer, if you're speaking to them, they're going to be like, oh, okay, let me check this out. Let me go see where your credibility is, how many followers you got. Like, those things are metrics to these young folks.
Yeah, right. Even though, and I was looking at a video last night, even though, again, it cannot say a whole lot about a person, you know, how many followers that they have. You know, we could, you know, there's people who have millions or hundreds of thousands, and it's like, they're not saying nothing. But they got 100-something thousand followers. It says something just to even have that. And so that's where we're at these days. And again, we could hate it and not like it, or we can go, you know what, let me just figure out this camera thing. Like, what is a TikTok? You know, let me just take a little bit of time.
But, you know, as a nonprofit goes, I think there are creative ways by which you can build that budget. Right? It's like media and arts programs. Well, how do you have creative media and arts programs without a social media or a nice website? Like, that's part of the budget. The first project for an intern is really to figure out social media or to update your website or whatever the case may be. Like, some of these things are investments. And you know, like, if you find a skilled person who's willing to barter, like, this is how we got to where we are in terms of like our videography. I'm so fortunate. Like, I found somebody who is like on the upswing in terms of learning and invested in them, and they've, like, because of that, they invested back in us. And for the last 4 years, we've been working together to the point where we can produce things like this now. But when we started,
Right. So that ain't what he was doing. He went up to that.
No, and so it's like, so somebody told me once that you really have to invest in your people. And so, like, to get a quality output, I gotta put quality input. And I can say, oh, well, go produce this video, and I can get a video back. But if it doesn't behoove me to go back and critique it and give, you know, positive and constructive feedback and to say, hey, next time let's do it this way, and maybe think about this, and I'm investing in you, and oh, by the way, I'm going to get another camera so that you can do something else. These things are, you know, are critical to the advancement, because I'm personally not doing any of it. You know, I'm not. But it has to happen, and I've known that. I felt it, because honestly, I really don't like social media. I really don't. But I do feel like a lot of our ability to connect and show and improve is because of social media. I can just point to it and be like, yo, we have 1,000 stories up there. We got 1,000 pictures of all Black men. What else? Right. And then if there's more, we got a YouTube channel, which we haven't talked about. But like, and being able to capture that content here, it speaks. Not everybody, not if it's in your audience. I'm not going to read an annual report for a deck. Like, you have to cater to all of the different readership levels, viewership levels.
Right. Very true. Man, no, that's all good. That is all good. You know, again, I don't think that we can emphasize it enough. But I know that it's definitely a struggle honestly, for the folks who really care about doing the work. It's a struggle for us to go, and I gotta like present it like this, right? Because we know part of the hang up is that people can not do the work but present it like they are. And we're thinking, but if we're the real ones,
right,
then it's gonna show. And it's like, it might not if you don't show it. You know, if you don't draw attention to it, people might be like, I'm gonna go with them because I see them all the time and everybody keeps talking about them, even though, you know, you got blood, sweat, and tears in the game. You know, we know that there are some organizations that are like hardly putting in the energy, the effort, the heart that they could be. But everybody already knows about them. It's a great marketing. And they were at that disaster, and they got pictures of it, they got videos of it, but people hugging and crying. There's kids that are dirty and like holding them, like, oh, kiss me, baby. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you should go, take my money, right? And whatever you guys need volunteers. I'm coming to you guys' website. What do you need? Here's all my information. And then there's the folks who, again, don't sleep, put in all kinds of odd hours to make it happen. And, they're struggling to get people to, recognize them. And so honestly, with our program, she's my assistant, but like one of the first things I was like, I always need somebody to do all the camera stuff. Like, great, whatever we're trying to do, that's going to be good, but we got to find people who are going to be interested in taking the pictures, have some know-how around it, and can put increasing energy into it, because if we can't show it, it's not even going to matter.
Happen.
Exactly. Like it didn't even happen.
Yeah, and then to add to that, I would say the only alternative, maybe it's not even an alternative, but is having the advocacy come directly from the people.
Right.
You can have an influencer in your social sphere that you support. Maybe they are spreading the word for you, or on the ground talking, which is a lot of what we get is like these young folks, like if they believe in what you're doing and you're highlighting them on your social media, they're going to go back. All of these people that we put on our social media,
Exactly.
they're sending it out.
Yeah.
We get hella views, not because we get them, but because they're posted from other people.
Exactly.
And so we're creating the content that the young folks can relate to, because it's like, they're saying they're keeping it real. We're not afraid to, unfilter their conversation and put it out there if you're not afraid of it, because that's what we stand for. And they like it. They're like, oh, I'm going to promote this.
Right.
What is, you mentioned earlier, you said your minimum age was really about 15 and up, and you had made a comment about a lot of other liability issues that was lower. Can you expand a little bit more on that? Like, why not lower than 15? And the reason I asked that is, well, a lot of people that I've been seeing here in San Francisco that have youth programs, they're saying that it's becoming harder and harder to reach 15 and above.
I agree with this.
Right. And so they're saying like you have to go younger and younger to be able to like build to reach them and have the engagement. They were like, it dropped down to middle school. Now we're even trying to consider going even below younger than middle school to be able to have an impact before we lose them. So
I agree with that.
that's why the background, I guess, for my question.
I agree with that. And I think one of the tenets that we try to live by is we stretch ourselves, but we try not to overextend. And recognizing like, because we provide agency and we source our talent through our community, we don't necessarily have all of the strict constraints around having everybody go through the system, get their fingerprints, get all the things that they need, because sometimes it's a one-off situation. And so we're not able to always control background of whoever we're working with, and we don't necessarily want to. And so we try to position people to be most successful. And so working with TAPE programs is really typically an easy kind of entry point if there's already established TAPE programs out there. They usually start at 15. And so that's kind of how we've aligned it. But then because we have individual programs and individual practitioners, a lot of people want their children to experience some of these things, to come to yoga, to see Black men doing these things. So we don't turn them away. We invite them, but we don't hold regular programming.
And then so your regular programming, that would be like, would that include the things, all the different programs as far as like your story bonus program and storytelling? So from 15 up, and how would you say is the engagement like for the younger, the 15 to 18?
So inbound, I would say our youngest member now is 18. That's to your point. Like you get a little bit younger, you got to work around things like transportation, school, and like all these other things, right? And so that's usually where we're going outbound. We're going to like a downtown Tay, or we're going to like a Piers Net, or wherever they have their own institutions. And we supplement with programming workshops, facilitation. But we don't have our own program dedicated to. Did I answer your question? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What was your question?
Yeah, no, just like the engagement or like, because I was, the next question to follow up was like, how are you recruiting or finding those?
Yeah.
You know, if it's the younger population, like 15 to 18.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, like we are kind of not extractive, but like a lot of our, like I mentioned, we work with nonprofit institutions and they have their own take program.
Gotcha.
So when they bring us in, like we're hella dope. And so like these folks love us because they're like, yo, y'all are doing what you want, you're saying what you want, you look how you want, you got locks, you got tattoos, you're not really caring about authority, you're doing all these visual things, and we want to be a part of it. We want to be on the podcast. And so they look at it as like an after school program or whatever the case may be that they actually want to be a part of. And we're not charging the youth. You know, so they come, they hang around, they get their services, they're getting mentorship, they're getting all of that exposure, and it's relatively for free because.
How do you, I guess this is more in directly with what I'm getting ready to do for your business. Like, how are you partnering with those other organizations? Or what is that like? Is it through MOUs?
Yep.
Is it,
Yep, we do MOUs, and it's largely for programming. So some programming looks like we just want you to come around and be here one day. You know, provide visibility, let black men have visibility to our kids and vice versa. Some of it looks like, well, for example, I told you we have a 6-week course. And so we partnered.
emotional resilience?
Yeah, we partnered with 2 organizations last year to lead 2 cohorts of that course.
Is that in person, virtual?
In person, both. I try to create the in-person experience for people who are not able to. I give it, but meaningful connection is hard to make
Yeah.
over virtual, unless you already had it. But we do. So we offer, for example, 80% of our programs are virtual. You can come to yoga online. You can come to our book club, our media club online, our upliftment course, our enrichment support group.
You started doing that because of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So you're able to build that, but allow you to maintain that community.
But now it's like, I'm like, people they opt out of coming in person, so
and changes that experience.
Yeah. So this is a duality.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it works well, for example, like Chicago. We're working with people in Chicago, having that online ability gives us a little bit more reach. It's like we don't have to have a footprint in Chicago, right? We can offer yoga, we can offer the media club, we can offer storytelling, and all of these other things virtually. And we don't have as much traction, sure, but it is an inlet, until we identify our partners and identify the programs that we want to establish. So I think, it is a good tool. It is a good tool. And I try to utilize it in conjunction with not, but yeah, I think the key with the youth though is it's the meaningful engagement. They want to see that they can. Executive director I had mentioned earlier, he has a phrase that he uses: "Can't be what you can't see." And I've experienced that because he works with youth, and I've taken that and I run with it because I believe like if these youth can see it, if they can see themselves in it, they're engaged. Otherwise. And so this is why we like the investment in some of these things. Because adults like talking about Instagram, like people older than me are like they're still looking at Facebook. You know what I mean? And so there's this an interesting bandwidth or spectrum of things that we have to do. But I realize like the future is the gatekeepers are the elders. And so there's kind of like I got to do a little bit of both to make sure that we're bringing the youth along the journey. And then making sure the elders are actually there to promote and see what's
Right. One question still is on my mind is, you know, you say you have folks with whom you write grants, or work on the grants. What advice do you have around keeping people around you, or rather building a team of folks, you know, whether it's, you know, all I have is this much money to offer to folks, but they're still willing to like come through and like offer their expertise. Again, for the folks who are just starting, who don't have like a salary per se to give to folks, what are the means by which people are like willing to go, oh, sure, like I'll help you with this. I'll you know, give you these services.
Yeah. So one thing that I've seen that works really well, especially when it comes to wellness, is the bartering system. Like our practitioners, I was just talking to our yoga instructor yesterday, and he was like, "Man, I just had the best Reiki session." And I was like, "Yo, how much did that cost? I wanna go get some Reiki myself." And he was like, "Oh, it was free because I offered them a yoga class."
Mm. You were like,
Yeah. And I was like, that shit makes so much sense. Like these people are out here taking care of each other for free.
mhm,
And it's not uncommon because I talked to an acupuncturist and she was like, yeah, I went to go get acupuncture from my homegirl. I can give it to each other for free.
Mm.
She doesn't mean I can't do it myself.
right.
All bartering. Like collect, and so this is getting back to the community as a service. Like, we can find the solutions in our community.
Right.
For sure. And so I think that, you know, the barter system is really one way. And then also, I think stemming from that is like finding what your zone of genius is, recognizing and admitting what it is that's not your zone of genius and where you can't play or shouldn't be playing. And then identifying of those areas, what are the priorities? How do we fill those? And for the longest, I didn't have the ability to pay. But then I had to be critically discerning about what I wanted to do with time, because I couldn't do everything. And social media, what didn't make the list? It didn't make a list for me because I'm like, fuck that. I'm not even on my own personal social, much less that. But as a zone of genius that I didn't have it, I knew I had to find somebody who had to do it. And when I first found somebody, it was somebody who was like, all right, I can do this volunteer. It's not a big deal. It wasn't the greatest, but it did something, you know. And then until I could get somebody who could do it for $25 an hour, and then I could get a whole team to do it, and then yeah. But it was an iterative process. Starting with identifying my own limitation, because at the beginning I was like, but I can do it.
Right.
I can do it, and I tried that. And I wrote out this thing, and I was like, I'm gonna do a post a week at least, and then I'm gonna have different topics. And then I came to it, and I was like, man, fuck this. Like the newsletter, like my newsletter, I try to send out a monthly newsletter. Even that is challenging because it's like getting into a different zone of change. When you're constantly doing this or doing finance or doing business development or doing operations, to sit down and carve out an hour to write a telling narrative to an audience that is all inclusive, that talks about the last month of activity and all this. Shoot. But it's important.
Right.
And so then I had to find somebody to support me with that. And then like that all falls into like the median. Because I couldn't, it's like to your point, nobody's telling my story until they are. It starts with me telling.
Right.
And so how do we find those creative ways? And it's like, even when I first started social media, I was on my phone doing selfie videos. Like, well, what up, y'all? Create the space. You know, this is the mission. This is the vision. Tragic. It was terrible. It was terrible. But I had to force myself to get out there and expose myself like that and take the risk and, you know, humble myself. The idea, like, you know, like if people are out here doing these things, I got to get in there and see what it's about. And if I really want it, I need it. I got to understand it. And I realized that It wasn't my job to be doing it.
Mhm.
I gotta find it.
Right. That's good. No, I'm glad you said that. I know that there's a guy that I'm been cool with for years, and I actually brought up to him maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. He hates social media. I can't get him. When Facebook came out, I was on cloud 9. I was like, wait, who else? Wait. I could go back. How far? Let me see it. What's his name? Oh, I was on the zone. Messenger in the zone. Anyhow.
Oh, AOL Messenger.
Right. And so I was telling him, like, man, I could use his photography skills. I was like, but you can't stay on social media. I'm like, dude, you got some stuff you want me to do with your social media? I can hook you up. I'm like, dude, like this stuff is like so fun to me. Like we can do something. And so he still hasn't given me the okay, but he has been like, yo, like we can't take pictures. He's like, I still don't know about social media part because I still feel like he just can't literally like maybe even like you mentioned, like can't stand it. Like it's not like I don't want to do it. It's like I can't stand it. So it's a part where he probably doesn't even want to do it, even if I'm willing to help him out with it. At the end of the day, that was an idea that I'm trying to work with insofar as again working with folks who have skills. So I'm like, I know there's certain things that I can take the time to figure it out, or again, take the money and pay them with this and
Yeah, for sure. And then there are other things that people need. Right?
Exactly.
And so, like for example, our videographer for the last 4 years built his entire, not his entire, but I will say, and he's very adamant about this too. And he sometimes pulls at my heartstrings, but he's just like, yo, like when I first met you, I was a part-time videographer. Like he had a full-time job. And then I threw a lot of work his way. We worked, we built, and then clients started coming. Yeah. And then my website is basically his website. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah, just check this out. Look at what I did over here.
Right.
That's the
And that-
portfolio.
that's the portfolio. I mean, of course, he has his own portfolio, but like the work we've done is like a huge portfolio. And then I got, he's got his own link to his page on my website, and he gets video credit on social media. And over the last 3 years, he's like, yo, I had to quit my job in the first year of meeting you in order to maintain his ability to do all of them.
Right.
So he's just like, yo, I don't know where I would have been without you investing in me. So that's kind of like the idea, right? I might not be able to pay you, whatever you want, but I can definitely support you getting.
Right. And that makes me think about that's a whole other, if you will, kind of aspect that is part of creating the space that isn't necessarily, again, like necessarily how it started and where it was trying to go. But then now you can see, man, this is actually its own thing. People can possibly come through, have the skill, provide the skill, develop the skill, use the skill, get paid for it elsewhere. And now it's like, dude, like, people think about what can I offer?
For sure. And
to
that's
the community?
and this is the critical mass that we need, is like to understand, because it's hard to explain unless you experience it in that way. Because people come to like, oh, we want yoga, or I want to play a part of the book club, or I want to do the happy hour. We just started the happy hours yesterday, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, I saw the email. I was like, oh.
Yeah. And so it's like people come for that experiential desire. I want to connect. But what we've had to kind of reshift the focus on is like, this is not just like an experience or a community, like we get social in this.
Exactly.
This is a community to provide back to the community. So the idea is that you identify how we can leverage the support that we put to uplift yourself to do what it is that you want to do for them. And we have largely the wraparound support that can get you, whether, because now fortunately we've got our own equipment, we've got our cameras, we've got our speakers, we've got our production stuff. And we've got the know-how, like we've got the staff that has like talent and wellness and consulting, all of the things. And so if we can find somebody who's willing to be like, you know what, I want to invest in myself. I'm not ready to quit my job per se, or maybe I am, and I want to help build out this program. I want to bring it to the community. we're gonna be like, oh yeah,
Right.
let's do it. Help
Right.
you write it up. We can develop the marketing for it. We can put together the program outline and develop the syllabus and your curriculum. And so long as you got the skill set and the knowledge, and the wherewithal to the initiative, we're gonna support you. Get
Right.
and that's the agency part. And so we can go knock on the doors and command the dollars, shop out the service catalog. We have a service catalog. So for example, if you talk about financial literacy, this is what I'm talking about, one pager. You put your one pager in a standard service catalog. And that part that goes out in my monthly emails to my people. And I'm just like, all right, what's it? And it's constantly growing. So it's like you can pick and choose. Oh, we want financial literacy. How we then I tap you and be like, yo, it's a fish on the hook. We need programming starting this. There would be, what do you think? How much you want to pay? How do you want to charge? And this is how we do it.
Yeah, that's dope. That's dope. I'm thinking about what Candace even mentioned when she said that it didn't start with we're going to do Peace Open Collective, we're going to do homelessness, this is how we're going to approach it. It was we're going to hang out. She said, you know, we would, and that's not a space where I met her. I met her before that, but that was something I recognized was that like Candace was always kicking it. And I'm like, yo, like, what's up? Like, I'm kind of, you know, I'm bored, right? I don't know what else to do. I don't know, you know, I don't know a whole lot of people outside of the network that she was creating and stuff. So I'm like, yo, like, you know, I'm trying to be at the event. And that just, if you will, evolved into let's talk about what's going on in Oakland to what are the main things that we really want to, or we can see ourselves addressing to let's get the 501c3 and so forth. So I'm not even sure if it even started as, and man, we want to start a 501c3. I think they were just like, we have jobs, we have good jobs. We're working at different places that we want to, and we want to stay connected as Black folks in the Bay Area. Let's just do that. And it just sprung into, you know what, we could have a whole organization that has a whole, you know, this many millions of dollars in the budget now. And it's like, but it started off with community. And so I really, and she really emphasized that when she was here. It was like, if you just start getting folks around you and you start getting around folks, like things can come from that. But, you know, community is key.
For sure. And I believe that 100%. We talk about it in terms of proximity. Like community is a big word. Not everybody is a community. Like I could be in Oakland, I can be out there, and a group of 30 of us could be there. And it's not a community.
Right.
It's just individuals collecting. So I talk about it in terms of proximity because proximity begets. And so as Black men have gone, we've been extracted from the household to live with it. Our households have been disrupted. Divide and conquer is a strategy with a strategy in the name, which is crazy. It's a war tactic and it's so effective. And to this day, we're still living in that aftermath of, oh, I'm so individual. I need to go get mine and I need to take care of the bag and you know, and then I'll come back to the hood 30 years later. That's not how it works, right? You got to create the proximity because the moment we decide to go do these individual things is the moment we turned our back on the collective good. And yeah, some people like everybody needs to take care of their own circumstance, but with a lens for that community, and that starts the proximity. So if I can be with you, next to you, in closeness to you, live close to somebody. To Jermaine's point, the resonance, the ideas, the possibilities change because we're in proximity. If I'm not talking to you, if I'm not relating to you, I'm not going to pick up on the things that you need and the skills that you have and the ideas and the wavelengths and the energy and all of these things. You lose.
Go back to the individualism versus collaboration.
Yeah. And so that's why we started with creating community first. Like we got to bring the community together before we can even talk about activism or awareness or all these other things. Like, I just got to get people in the building to say, hey, I'm having a good time amongst my friends. Now I can talk to you about how we make change.
Well, that's when the vulnerability comes in,
Yeah.
the authenticity and the ability to connect.
Sure.
Sure, and I think a lot of people do that backwards. It's like, oh, we've got shit to accomplish. Who do we want to get in the room? How do we get it most efficiently? And how do we get their knowledge? And then form this task force. It's like, yeah, you can do that. And it's effective, it's efficient that way, but it's not the most meaningful. And it's not really cultivating the community. It's kind of contrived. But at Create the Space, people volunteer to opt in, like community membership, then the actual leadership and the planning and the programming, like not forcing anybody to do anything. So it's your choice. Now, if you want to do it, you want to participate, then okay, let's talk about how we actually do that.
It's in the ownership though.
Right.
That's where you get people committed versus people like starting to fall off, or that's not really committed to the cause or to the issue at hand. You get people that are passionate. You allow them to have that agency and that.
And now what I have to do is then check my ego. I got to get out of the way. I can't stifle somebody else's creativity. I can't stop their momentum. I can provide guidelines and things, my input. But that's hard because like when you have a community-based organization and people from the community are coming from all over the place with these ideas, yeah, I love your creativity.
Wow.
You know what you should do? You know what we can do? You're like, oh man, yeah, I know what that means. Too.
We get a lot of that.
Yeah,
Sure. Every new member comes in and like, yeah, I got it. Here's what we need to do. And I'm like, cool.
You know how we gonna blow up? Oh no. Right.
But
I
you
agree.
said it earlier though too. Like, so, okay, well, how are you gonna do that?
Yeah.
I'll let you do that.
Right. Now
Work
push
on
it
it.
back.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I hear that.
There you
Right.
go.
Bring it back when it's a little bit more baked. And
Yeah.
and then you'll see where people are.
Right.
And some people will be like, okay, I'll do that. I'll be back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's when you build strong. For me, I think this is build a really strong, because then everybody takes that agency, takes that ownership. They're able to thrive and have that space to be able to grow.
Yeah, for sure. And then now I also have more confidence, more trust in letting go of certain things. And that frees me up to go fundraise.
Yeah. And you'll see what people, like you said, you'll see what people will put in and what they want. And they'll kind of whittle themselves out if they just don't have the time or the capacity or the skill set. And then the other ones who like really are passionate, see them do whatever they need to do to make it happen.
Yeah, and it's a great kind of self-barometer, because on the one hand, it's like I get super frustrated. I'm sniffing them out. I'm like, and then I see these people, but then there are people who are just like super who are on my line and who are sending emails and who are trying to set up meetings, and I'm just like, oh, can you do that without me?
Great.
Right.
But I need some space.
And so I've had to learn a lot about my own leadership style and what I need and how I can move and what's advantageous for me, or where I need to pull in on the reins and where I need to let go. And that's the last 5 years for me is just constant. It's been an evolution because I'm not just a founder and CEO. Like I'm cleaning the toilets too.
Right.
Starting from the ground up.
Yeah.
Right.
And so people are like, oh, what do you do? And it's like, you're a founder. Not that glamorous. Like I found it. I also am responsible for everything. Okay? Like everything. I'm doing the things that nobody else wants to do.
Well, honestly, it's it's 12:15. I don't want to take too much more of your time. I want to be like, what's this? What's this check? But no, again, thanks again so much. Definitely super glad that I brought you in. For numerous reasons. I definitely know that for the folks again who aren't here, I'm like, when they don't show up, I'm like, oh, I'm just praying that. And honestly, why we have all this is so that they can watch it.
And I'm impressed. Kudos. I like that. We need more content.
Yeah, but also again for the sake of just them not having completely missed, because that's what when we first started, it would just be us. We'd have a speaker, and if they weren't there, they just weren't there. And they're like maybe somebody took notes. That's it. And what I said for this cohort, I said we got to the same thing. So they have to miss because it is during the day, And some people, honestly, I'm surprised how often people have shown up because a lot of people can be like, I just can't do it during the day. Like, it takes up too much of my time. However, the reality is that, again, we're able to put it on YouTube, we're able to send it out in an email and be like, hey, you weren't there. That's fine. You still gotta check it out. Exactly that too, right? And even my thoughts around that too, as people who aren't part of the cohort can even check it out, be like, oh snap, like, how do I learn about these types of things, right? And so at the end of the day, we make sure we got the mics and everything so that people can get this information, because I know it's going to be vital to them again creating their organization or their business, making some things happen. And so, yeah, I definitely know it's going to be super helpful. Check it out.
Okay. And so one thing that kind of just sparked my attention that I didn't talk about was like, how do you create things that are evergreen that can continue to work without you? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And one thing in my mind is last year we invested in an LMS, learning management system. And so we're like, we've got all this content, we've got all these videos, we've got all these things.
Is that what you're doing? Like you're storing your workshops and stuff?
So our curricula, like workshops, like these things, like, because at some point we're going to get to the point where we can put a price tag on these things and let them live out there on the Ethernet or internet.
Right.
It'd be nominal, $39 for a course, a 3-part series in something,
Yeah.
But I'm like, if we don't actually capture this stuff, we're not thinking about how we can utilize them in the future. You're not going to have it.
Right. That's real.
So I appreciate your efforts in making sure you capture it all.
Yeah. Again, it's just
Yeah.
right. But no, yeah, it dawned on me, and I'm just thinking, because I know what we had with the funding for the program is in 2024, like the summer, and so I don't know, Wyndham Breed's in there right now. I'm not sure who's going to be in next. If they're going to be like, look, we don't even know Dream Initiative, right, or Dream Keeper, whatever, or what they're going to want to go into. But my thoughts are, how do we make sure that this is something that can possibly survive, into, okay, we don't know who the mayor is, but they want to be like, that was good. You know what I mean? That was something that was helpful. That was giving people the resources, the understanding, the wherewithal. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I'm looking at it. And so I think that I'm just, honestly surrounded by a lot of folks who have done things for entrepreneurs. I haven't seen a lot of people do things for folks who are starting nonprofits. And so I'm just thinking like this can be one of those things that helps fill that space for people who are like, everybody's talking about an LLC. Everybody's talking about, making money, with this or with that. But, what about the folks who are trying to do this for the community? How can they do that? But again, even what the information that you're sharing, I think it even just sheds that light on how impactful an LLC can be, but how it can also, again, work in conjunction with a 501c3. And so, again, like folks like Candace and so forth, some folks are definitely showing you like a lot can happen with a 501c3, and they just need to be able to see kind of like that variety.
For sure, and I do think it's useful to if you're a 501c3, align yourself with an agency that's doing partner work that may not be a 501c3. There's a lot that can be accomplished in terms of leverage and reach, and I think there's a reason why a lot of nonprofits feel and look antiquated. It's because they're not getting the dollars to stay fresh. It all goes to the work.
Right.
And then the people working are burnt out because they're doing 3 jobs. So it's like, okay, that's a challenge.
Yeah.
And so like I talk to my county constituents, and they always talk about how they don't want to seem and look and feel that way. And they don't necessarily know how to get out of that.
because there are so many ropes and some like nobody. They did actually. There was an RFP for a $300,000 job for updating the county website last year.
Wow.
And they wanted me to apply.
Mm-hmm. I don't want to do that. Forget that 300. That is not appetizing, right?
Not advertising, it's not even my skill set. Like I learned how to code minimally so I could put stuff on my website. But like that took me a year.
Right.
But then I do know people who do that. And I can put, and I did. I put them in contact with somebody, but I don't know what happened to our government. So slow.
Right.
But these are the things. It's like they really do recognize it's an antiquated system, and in part, partially, I feel like it's all. It make it so difficult for anything novel or innovative to pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like the good old boys just keep on circulating.
Mm-hmm. I hear that.
It's not like this Twitter and others will say, you know, don't rely on or don't just like, even like put all your egg in one basket with like government money.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you want to be innovative, if you want to be able to do your own thing or to be able to do the fresh things, you need to be able to look at elsewhere.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Or not.
And so like things like this, you know, this video, like we wanted to produce this maybe 6 months before we were able to. No, probably a year and 6 months, because I was like with my videographer, I was like, yo, start capturing random content because I want to put together a documentary.
Mm-hmm.
And that was hard. It was just like, what are we capturing?
Right. Tell me what to capture and I'll capture, right.
But when we finally got a sponsor, and we finally got a direction, because they were like, oh, we're looking to sponsor this. We're looking to sponsor something around wellness, has to do with Black men, has to do with voices. And getting Black men's voices in around wellness. Perfect. Sign the check. We got it. And I pitched it, and they loved it. They actually had approached 2 different organizations where they were going to spend their corporate social responsibility dollar. And they asked for a proposal. We got one. How many proposals you want?
Right.
Pick one. And we got $20,000 to do it.
Right. That's that.
And so it's like, it's possible. And I'm a fan of if you build it, they will come. Because I'm like, I'm tired of waiting for people for permission, for their checks, for their advocacy, whatever the fuck. I'm going to go do it.
Right.
And show y'all that I did it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that's what's gotten me where I am, because I honestly couldn't count on it. Mm-hmm. I'd have been starving and moved out of the city by now.
Mm-hmm. Real talk, because you came from Chicago and you're dealing with the Bay Area economy.
Still dealing with it.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. Still dealing with it. But you could have been like, I ain't doing that shit. Right?
Yeah, but it's crazy because now I'm in the space where I'm trying to advocate for sustainability. Like, the last 4 years has been great in trying to piecemeal revenue and make a name for ourselves. But I'm like, now it's at the point where I've sat at this table too many times. I know too many people. Like, I need to have some sustainable long-term vision with funder or partner organization or somebody that's really going to be in this.
Right. Minute. Yeah.
That's been challenging. I made it where I made it, but like
And actually, I had written down one of my questions was because I saw DHCS. What are you doing with them?
So DHCS was actually one of our large grant funders. We got entered into a program, your certification program.
Is it the Medical one?
Yeah.
From Cali? You guys are doing that too? And that's actually from one of the things that I'm just starting for looking at addressing the long-term sustainability.
Yeah, well, so we got the expanding peer organization capacity building,
Okay.
which was basically to get us certified, up and running, any kind of technological support needs, all of those things. So we got the training, we got the certification. Still in the process, actually.
Yeah.
So that that was where DHCS came. That was a 2-year grant.
Yeah, no, definitely want to talk to you about a few things. Because as I was seeing those, I've been writing down some stuff, and I see a lot of like overlap. But for sure, that's what we're doing. So,
For sure.
but the peer, because you mentioned peer support, but I didn't know if it was the medical peer support.
Shit show. I don't even know if we're gonna do it. If we're gonna go through it, I think half the organizations have just been like, fucking, because it's just too many loopholes. No real
For
answers.
billing,
Yeah.
yeah, the invoicing and how does that process look?
Mm-hmm.
And they're just not, well, they've been for, I mean, government agencies go slow, but like they just really have started like rolling out some of the information. But I've been following this for the last year,
Mhm.
right? Like the talks and the webinar and all the stuff that's been going on. But like literally they're behind the curve on stuff, on a lot of stuff, and sending out information. Like they had to extend some of their stuff,
Yeah.
grandfathering and stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, 6 more months because they're definitely not getting the information out.
We've been in this grant process with DHCS for 1.5 years now. And we were supposed to have been certified. We were supposed to have been contracted with an agency and then able to be billing Medi-Cal by now. They haven't even released a national test for peer certification. Yeah, they just
They
released
just
it
did this month.
this month.
Yeah.
Right.
Crazy.
Wow.
And then all of the backdoor conversation is around, I don't know what they were thinking with that grant, because, you know, as a community-based organization, it took us 12 years to get into the
Wow.
That's what other providers have been saying.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I don't feel
Well,
like-
that's what I had interpreted, but I wasn't in a position because I was still rebuilding our platform and our infrastructure. When I was hearing that they were trying to do that community building, I thought that was the purpose of that grant. Was to be able to like streamline it to get somebody to be able to do it within a year.
I thought so too.
Yeah.
That was the
And
whole
so
trend.
my next step was I was looking at like partnering and looking at with a couple of the organizations that were more established, and then just provide one specific service that adds value to what they're doing and not in competition with what they're doing.
Strategy. Yeah, I told you I was gonna learn something.
But that was my approach. That's why I said there's some things I think definitely.
Yeah, well, definitely. Let me, Jermaine, you have all my contact information, but I'll give you. I have an old card. Like, you can still do these.
Right. Still got it too. I'm old school. That's one of the things that coming out of prison after several years. You still have that old habits.
Sure. Cool. You know what else? Have you heard of Homies Empowerment?
I have.
Do you all collaborate with them?
I haven't connected with them. I've bumped into them at some events, performing. So I've actually spoken with the guy over there, but even with Candace, they're literally like right down the street from each other.
Okay.
So yeah.
So everything moves slowly. Last year, Reverend Harry Williams, I don't know if you know, he used to work at Glide. And 3 years ago, Glide approached us to bring our storytelling platform to the church. Didn't go through. But then since then, he moved to Homies Empowerment. And I spoke with him maybe 6 months ago. He was like, yeah, you definitely need to come collab with us, blah, blah, blah. 6 months passed, and then I was on a podcast last week with one of their program directors from Homies Empowerment. And I was hearing about some great work. So it's kind of just, on my mind. So another organization that you might be able to partner with, but it's one that I'm gonna try and get in contact with now that I've had the second run around. So maybe check them. Says our crews. I think they do reentry and support work too, but they also focus on
Right. Yeah, no, I've come across them a couple times. But yeah, no, I definitely feel like they're in the, if you will, on the branch, one of the branches of folks that I'm connected with. So there's a way.
Yeah. And so you said you formulated your own nonprofit?
No, I haven't formulated my own nonprofit. Again, a lot of stuff is happening through here. the stuff around the finances has been honestly like pro bono. At one point in time, I did do an LLC, but that was prior to COVID. And so around COVID, what I was going to do was do what I actually did. I did a book of poetry. What I was going to do with that, if you will, those speaking opportunities was like have it kind of like be like a slash workshop in which we do get to talk about the finances, but there's also like an element of like creative writing or something. But again, between COVID, marriage, getting a house and all this stuff, it was like, okay, all that has to take a back seat because we gotta get the money for this stuff. We have like a 9 to 5, that whole situation. But there is a intention, same thing around stuff like the hats and so forth. It's like, how do I get a LLC that allows me to like kind of bring everything together? So I don't want to have this like literally 3 different businesses, but some way that is kind of like support one another. Again, primarily around the financial stuff, but then we can talk about other aspects of life too. And so,
You already have the financial literacy curriculum?
to a degree, because I've done workshops.
That's what I said. The reason I asked that is because when I was in custody, this last in feds, I created like a business and a personal financial management. So like I have a curriculum that I like to develop and stuff. So maybe just sometime if that's something you're interested in, I can like look through some of the stuff that I've already created. We will incorporate it into ours at a later point. Some of the financial literacy for the people that we're dealing with and working with. But I mean, if there's components or how to like break down or structure it, like like just through it if you're
Yeah, and as soon as y'all get that together, let me know.
Right.
Yeah. So one thing that I will unsolicitedly give you, you mentioned pro bono work. Are you documenting and invoicing for your program?
Back then, yeah, no, I have, the folks that I work with some folks in different churches and different organizations. And, I have pictures and stuff on LinkedIn, I have stuff on Instagram of it. And so, yes, what I'm looking at is an opportunity to possibly do some stuff. Again, working with an organization that will allow us to, or allow me to connect with them via Zoom, talk about these different things. That would be possibly give me the opportunity that, okay, with this, I could actually have some money to fit into forming the LLC and making that whole thing like more solidified, because the way that they even operate is like, this is a business, this is I'm still trying to even remember all the terms that they were giving me, but it was like, this is a contract, this is what you're signing up for, this is what we're going to pay you, this is And so they're like, tell us your rates, tell us your this, tell us your that. And I'm like, like this is real. So I'm trying to learn from the process as it unfolds. But ideally, when that does happen, then it could become, more official. And again, I could say these are the rates for this many hours.
Be official, man. Just set your rate. Get a rate sheet.
Were you asking that for potential consulting, and then also maybe potential when you're going for funds and loans at it?
All of those things for sure. But the main reason I was asking you was because I heard you say you're not really generating or hadn't been really generating a lot of revenue, but you were giving it out pro bono. And so as an LLC goes, there's a line item in your booking that goes for write down of unrealized goods or unrealized revenue.
So you're talking about just to be able to show it on in your accounting as well.
Yeah.
Which I think that will lead to okay, you're going for funding, right? And then you can show that documentation of the work that you've done, of the contracts, even if it's pro bono.
Yeah, because if it's pro bono, it shows somebody's
value. Yeah, there's a value that people want that you're giving.
Right.
So that will help them.
So you set your price whatever that price is, and then you might have given it out pro bono, but that value was still transacted.
Right, right.
So you write that into your taxes, and you can write off those losses. So you might have given away $50,000 worth of work.
Right,
They
right.
might audit you for that, but I don't know. But like, there is, recourse for that, and I've definitely done that. Like, even at full price and doing a 75% discount, like that 25%, write that off.
Okay. Word, word. Well, yeah, honestly, man, part of, if you will, the just honestly the benefit and the blessing of being in these rooms is learning something that I like honestly haven't heard, right? So when you say some of those things, same thing with anyone else who comes in, I'm like, didn't hear about that. I could have swore that, for instance, this sponsorship was only for, nonprofits, okay, so then this is how you can do it. These are people who are doing it for LLCs. So I'm learning way more than I would have just from, because, I'm on YouTube and stuff. I'm always looking at these videos and people are talking about stuff, but there's a lot more that I'm learning, especially about just doing business, if you will, here in the Bay Area that is probably unique to the Bay Area. So I have to take all this into account.
Yeah.
Well, that and then specifically just for our community. You got those two different elements, and then you can actually ask like direct questions and follow up.
Yeah, responsive.
Yeah, versus a YouTube video where they're giving some information out, but it's like
It's peanut butter.
yeah, how do I apply this? How do I?
Yeah, man, and like I said, man, I was a consultant for Deloitte for a while, and so I really don't talk about any of this past life stuff, but like business administration, business operations, business model transformation, like these are things that I did unwittingly. Didn't really get paid a lot for it, but I was like drinking from a fire hose. I did it for 3 years for all of the organizations that I worked in, industry across the industry. So like nonprofit, hospital, which largely nonprofit. There are some for-profit.
Right.
Healthcare companies, insurance companies, like all kinds of different companies. So I'd have to dust a lot of these things off, but any thoughts or questions that you may have, I'm a great resource.
Work.
And I can also.
Right. That's good news. Good news, definitely. And
As black men go, this is my creed. I'm here to invest in that.
Right.
Well, that's the thing. Where else do you get this? Like you mentioned earlier, like when you're being raised, unless your family is in it, you're not getting this information. You're not being raised with this information. It's really easily like step into this atmosphere, in this space.
Right.
For sure.
That's for me. That's one of the biggest value adds is and why I always come because I'm always like just brains and just soaking it up and how do I apply.
Yeah, and here's one thing. Maybe we can have another part 2 of this conversation, but there's a lot of money outside of California. Like California has a lot of
Right.
Don't get me wrong. There's a lot.
But there's a lot of competition. A lot of people are trying to like buy for that money as well.
But when I talk about a lot of money coming outside, like I think the rest of the country is usually between 5 and 10 years behind California.
You're right. Yeah.
And so I'm hearing a lot about, because I have family in other places like Midwest, Chicago, Ohio, some of these places. Like Chicago, Evanston was the first place to pass reparations bill.
Right.
They're actually paying people.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's like a $2 billion project going on in Midwest Cincinnati, Ohio, or something like this now. And like all of these things are coming around wellness and mental health. And the people who are in the know are getting all of the money.
Right.
And so like trying to establish some pipeline to accessing funds outside of just where we are, because we're at the spearhead, if you will, in terms of like policy and legislation and even liberal thought process.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know.
We're supposed to be sometimes,
right.
but like it's funny you mentioned like because one of the groups that I chair on, we're like working with the reparations committee right now, and local in San Francisco, but also with statewide. And
But to hear like other states, and
Yeah.
stuff, that's why I said we're supposed to be,
Supposed
but
to be.
like we're still like kicking this can.
But here's the thing though, is even though California's not the first mover, they do shape the rest of it. Right? So like the reason why I know about the reparations in Chicago is because they came here to California to host an event to talk about the work that they're doing out there, because they want California to take into account some of the things that they're doing out there so that they can get more money.
Right.
Because California will shape how things go.
Yeah, other states will follow.
Right.
Once a bigger state like this does.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and that's the same thing that we're seeing even with like the criminal justice system.
Is this something public? Can I have it?
Let me check it out real quick, because I know this was, I don't know if we. No, this one's not, but I can send you if you're interested and connect you with our group, but also with doing this. Like we put on a big forum in September and had like Shirley Weber and other people that were
Yeah, please do.
like she's spearheading the California part of it, and then connect with directly involved with the task force here in San Francisco.
Oh, cool. So I would love to. I don't know how.
Well, the thing, I mean, like sometimes I get frustrated. Like even at like the MLK March, and after the march, we went. They had like the events and stuff that was inside at the Yerba Buena and amphitheater stuff, and I was like, there are people that when they had their thing about reparations, I'm like, nope, like it was an empty room. I'm like, why are people like, do people just give up, or what's the reasoning? Like they're thinking it's not going to happen or what? But like, unless you're advocating, unless you're like coming together, and so like I work with this group, like the Black and Jewish Unity Coalition, but it's like on reparations, and we have like more Jews than blacks, and it's interesting because it's like, come on. I don't understand either. That's what I'm saying.
Can't make that shit up. Oh man. Yeah.
But that just boggles my mind. I'm just like, so I'm out there advocating, talking, and being like, hey, like we got actions, we got things that are going on, but we need your voice and your input, because once this is written up, you're gonna be mad if it's not written up, if you didn't have no input on it. Right? So, don't complain then. Get your butt over here now.
Right. For sure. And there are so many forums where this like high level money conversations are just taking place left and right.
Yeah.
We're just not.
And that's the point. Right. Gotta be there. If you gotta pay, what's that saying? Pay to play, or play to pay? Pay to play, something like that. You gotta be there.
You gotta play to get paid.
Either way.
That's real.
Either way, you're paying something.
Right.
So, but definitely include me. So this is the part, like I have a tendency to be like tunnel focused, like, but it is great to be involved in a lot of these things. My introvert really just keeps me.
Well, you have to if you want to build something specific, right? You got to be. One of my old mentors in prison, he would always tell me, like, I think I mentioned this before about the sun shining everywhere, right? But it only burns where it's focused. Right? So you got to put that magnifying glass on something specific, and once that spark ignites, then that flame starts spreading. But if you just have light everywhere, nothing's catching. So you gotta really focus on where is this, and that's the intentional. Intentionality and the focus of knowing your lane, standing what you're doing, getting that built up, but that can spread. But if you're trying to do everything, I do a little bit of everything on some other things, but I know where my range is, what my capacity is, and I know where my bandwidth. This is what I can do. This is what I can't do.
And that's half the battle, right? Is knowing yourself. Knowing yourself. So, this has been great. I hopefully this was useful.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody else was online. Did they have any questions?
Okay. Right.
It's the second one. They're gonna like last one. I know I was thinking the same thing. Like, oh, they're gonna be mad they missed it. But there was some. But the good thing you are recording it, so hopefully they'll sing afterwards.
Right.
So there's good information that is extremely useful and helpful.
Right.
It's definitely beneficial.
Yeah, and practical, right? Because I think to your point, like I don't know what I don't know, but if you hear it, then there's easy ways to go about it. Like the annual report thing, like I don't know how other people are thinking about that.
Right.
But if you hungry, it's
Right.
there. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's public.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do that for the top Fortune 100 companies and then get all kinds of contacts.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's crazy.
I don't know who's really interested in reading annual reports. Not too many people.
Mm-hmm.
But you're going in there with the intent
Yeah.
of, I'm going there to get this information to do this.
For sure. And then the other thing that struck me, which was like old school, but I picked up a newspaper last week. I don't know why I did it. I was like, I haven't seen a newspaper. I picked it up. I was sitting on my table and I didn't read it. I was like, why do I have this newspaper? So I started perusing it, and it was the Oakland Insider or something. It's like one of the local. I'm going through the sections, and then within it, I'm like, there's a business section, and there's like an announcement section, and there's like all this stuff. They have grant RFPs in there, and I'm like,
No way.
I should have been reading this shit every month.
A long time ago.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
I was like, I can cross-reference other businesses. I can see what properties are going up for like short sale, like all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, yo,
Wow. Right.
right here in this
Right.
newspaper, it's typed out.
Right.
Somebody already organized it for you. Put
Right.
it all together.
Right.
Like that resource has been there, and I just never knew about it. But I'm like, who knows what's in the newspaper?
Exactly. Nobody's like, did you read the paper today? Bruh. Wow, that's real.
Yeah. So that's another new resource I'm gonna add to my repertoire.
Mm-hmm. And they're talking about it there. Yeah. That's good stuff. Well, yeah, man. Thanks so much for coming through. Again, I know we're going to be in touch real soon. But these are the conversations, man. The ones that we want to have and get off the bottom, because yeah, like I said, and what would have happened if had this been a lot more cohort, it would have been somebody who broke down finances from the budget that is $22 million, and then be like, this is how we do fund development, and that's it. And you would have been like, cool, but how do I know about this on this level? And like I said, I was like, there's so much stuff that's out there that we don't know as a large organization, because we don't have to deal with it no more. That's so 10, 20 years ago. It's like, dude, now we're dealing with these problems. Like these ones are yesterday, And so this stuff is critical.
And it's great. It's great that you're even taking the time to read this stuff. Yeah, man, it's like we're not doing it for ourselves. Who is? No,
Right. That's real. That's real.
And we got to invest in the individuals, because the corporations, the organizations, they're gonna be fine.
Right. They're gonna survive.
It's really the talent. It's really the people, and we just need to invest.
Right. That's good. Cool. I know that I'm just like, this ain't gonna stop. We need to cut the This is good stuff. This is good.
I appreciate you.
Word.
I definitely would love to continue to collaborate any way that I can be useful.
Yeah.
And will you definitely be hearing from me? Got a lot of things I'd like to see for potential collaboration on several different levels.
And then I think there's some good organizations that I want to potentially put you in contact with if those stages are right.
Yeah.
For sure.
The nuggets that you shared information.
I'm glad I came, but I was like, this. So Jermaine and I talked maybe 3-4 months ago, before the year, and so Loretta, my assistant, she hit me and she's like, you gotta be in San Francisco. I said, what? Why? Why?
Yeah.
I said, I never go to San Francisco.
Right.
Said, prove it. Prove it. I ain't gotta go to San Francisco. Right. No, that's real.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. As always, thank you, Jermaine.
You are welcome. Thank you. Man, again, I've been trying to bring folks. I'm like, man, it's gonna be a packed house. Oh man, they're gonna be here. They're gonna be ready. And then it's like, oh shoot, like and I gotta send out the text and out the emails. I'm like, wanting like them to let me know I can't make it. This is what happened. But
Hey, it's not always easy, but I think
Exactly.
it's priorities. Right? Sometimes I just like for me, I'm like, hey, even like yesterday, I was like, last night, I'm like, oh shoot, tomorrow, let me just go ahead and just put in for like personal time off tomorrow morning.
right.
Now I'm editing back in the office.
But I mean, Jermaine, this is. I mean, despite the fact that people didn't show up, like it's hugely useful. Like the interviews, the thing that's being captured is still being exchanged.
Right.
The next level of this is just to take it to the public.
Right,
You can rent out a coffee shop or something, maybe not even rent it out, but like just get 20 people, and that's how we started. Really just advertising what we're already doing.
Right.
And take it to the public, and then we get outside voices, outside thoughts, more interest, all of these. You're already doing it. Like it takes some time and energy and resources to put this together.
Right.
So just add an email to it and say we're meeting at a coffee shop.
Right. No, I hear.
And you'd be surprised how who comes out of the woodwork.
Right. Yeah, for real. So I got some pizza and wings if you care.
Oh my God, you know what? I might come back. Let's see. I'm gonna be rushing when I see what the Uber, how long it's gonna take them.
Okay. Yeah, and you can take it with you, whatever.
Sure.
Yeah. I know you could drink it fasting too. So
Till about 1 o'clock. I'm looking at the
right. He said I got about
Right.
right.
Fun. Is it? All right.
Pleasure. Yeah, been great conversation. Yeah. And what's the rest of your day looking like?
So what we do normally after this is we take all this back to the office for storage, just leaving it there. But then honestly, resting from how we have to put everything together here. And then tomorrow.
You don't work out of this building?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, this is just for the training. Honestly, we've been doing a lot of stuff in the East Bay. So like we met at Starbucks, we meet at
Please come through the office.
Yeah, no, believe me, it's definitely on the radar. We were talking about it again last week. Because a lot of it is social media stuff. So again, it's the computer, it's the phone. So we don't need, like a whole bunch of stuff, but what would be good, especially if it's raining and stuff, or just being able to not have to be outside.
Yeah, like I said, like our production engineer, he left for the winter, but he'll be back at the end of this month.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's any way that you need like collaboration or support when it comes to like productions, and you're working out of the open area,
right. Cool. No, it sounds good. It sounds good because she's right over there. So we're just trying not to.
My car too.
Yeah. Indeed.
Oh.
Take that proverbial exchange.
Okay.
Filmmaker, you're a filmmaker too.
Yes.
And content creator. Okay. Well, you were always looking for additional filmmakers and content creators. Might get you up.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I told her, I said, stick around. I said, you don't know what type of opportunity come your way. You're working with me for the day, but after that, there's other stuff that could be coming your way. So yeah.
So, oh shit, I didn't even invite y'all. Well, I'll send an email, but the docu-short, that was a trailer for a docu-short. We have a film screening coming the 19th President's Day.
Okay.
And it's going to be a film screening. We have a panel discussion. We've got food and drinks. It's going to be a 3-4 hour event.
Nice.
At the Moxie.
Okay. Right. Mm-hmm.
So the documentary is 30 minutes long.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's private stream, but I'll send you the invite to the artists. If y'all are available, definitely come through. There's going to be some good folks there.
Right.
A lot of the, constituents that we work with.
Right. That sounds good.
What time?
On the 19th, 4 o'clock.
Okay. Mm-mm. Oh, okay. All right. Let me think about it for a second.
Right.
Yeah, in the process.
Right. Yeah.
So you're moving all this stuff? What are you about to do? Can I help?
Yeah. So what I'll do, just bringing it down to the car.
You run this TV and everything?
No. No, just the binders, and these bags. I keep wanting to like give them these things, but again, if they're not here, then I can't leave it with them. But yeah, just the binders and these things over here. And what I'll do, I'll take it to just camera equipment.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. We just got a couple things again, just so that she could do what she needs to do the best that she can. And I'll take that to down the street, so like in 3 or 4 minutes, and then drop it off, and then head back to the there.
You're in about you can ride it?
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask you if you can take me to the BART, but if you're going to the East Fam, drop me off at the exit on the highway.
Right.
You're not close.
That was a little walk off right here. But yeah, no, that's what we'll be up to. Again, fortunately, that's the bulk of these days, just because there's so much that goes into pulling it together.
Yeah, no, I understand. I was like all the offline stuff that people don't see.
Right. Exactly.
It's like every idea you come up with creates a lot of work.
Right.
Coordination, emailing, meetings, logistics, and marketing, outreach. Like I'm like, you don't see any of that. Okay.
Right.
So this is why I'm pushing back. The idea sounds great. Put more time.
Right. Show me how you're gonna do all the work. For real. Yeah. So again, we got a couple things there. And then my
No, I'm not lactose intolerant, but I am allergic to casein. But
is that an element that's in the cheese?
cheese,
Chemical.
casein is a dairy protein. So in all things dairy really kind of irritate my throat, sinuses, plug up my ears. Wow. But I'm not lactose intolerant, which is what I had me going for so long. I used to be so proud of that. I used to drag it. You can't eat that. I'm lactose intolerant. Like, let me get this ice cream real quick. Right. But then I realized I'm actually allergic to it, which is probably worse.
Yeah, it sounds like it is. So I feel like lactose intolerance is just kind of like your cats eat at the restroom. That's minor compared to not breathing.
Yeah, like I would literally wake up.
Right.
I wouldn't have no idea what it was, but I would go to sleep after like eating a pizza or something and wake up at like 2 o'clock in the morning, stifling. Like I was choking on my own nasal passages. Like, I was like, yo, do I have sleep apnea or something?
Right. Something out.
That's very.
Was it always like that as a kid, or did it at a certain point?
It got worse.
And so I say I had a certain point where I just like my skin got really like allergic to certain things, like certain soaps, and all of a sudden the same thing. I woke up and I had to go get a benadryl shot because I couldn't breathe.
But here's what they tell you. They tell you, oh, you develop allergies over time. No, but the fucking truth is that the food has gotten worse over time. Right? Like all the GMO, the more we eat it, the worse we're going to be, of course. Right? It's not the food. It's the process.
Right.
So it's like where you go out of the country, you can eat bread and you can eat some of these other things and be like, no, it's different.
Definitely a huge difference in quality.
So it's all this propaganda, man. I was sick when I heard that Simply Orange Juice, man. I was like, that's the one orange juice that I love.
Simply is so good.
So good. All their products. I'm like, oh man, I got Simply lemonade.
Huh? Something happened to them or
Yeah,
no?
they got ousted for like having unacceptable levels of pesticides and harmful carcinogens in their orange juice. Right?
I didn't even hear about that.
Really?
Because I do have a fundraisers.
Man, that's a bomb. Yeah. And so it was like a big news break.
Mhm.
I was like, what? As I drink my orange
So I'll stop tomorrow.
yeah, because I was like, I'm halfway through the bottle now.
I got that, but I'm trying not to dip. Wow. Drink some water.
Definitely a pleasure. As always.
Right.
And then, Jermaine, the next one we have is what, 2 weeks on the 15th?
Mhm.
Okay. Is there anything, because I never got response when we had to fill out some information for Miss Newton.
Right.
Has anybody, I don't even know if they even received it, or the form or something I filled out?
That's a good question, actually. So we were talking right before the break, right